Indeed, our population, our citizens demand much harsher actions from us. It was very hard for us to go to the second round of negotiations. When Ukraine deliberately, on the day of our departure, blew up a passenger train and civilians and children died. You see, sometimes when a missile is aimed at a military target, electronic warfare is used, the missile is deliberately redirected, and it explodes, hitting a neighboring house. This is part of war, this is tragedy. Sometimes when a missile is shot down, debris falls on residential buildings and people die. That also happens, but it's terrible, but it's part of war. When a passenger train is moving, in my opinion, a double-decker, it is visible from afar. A huge passenger train, and the person who blows up the railroad and the highway manually, seeing this train, presses the button. The button was pressed manually. And this is terrorism. This is not a train with tanks. It's not even a train with fuel. It's clear that this is a passenger train. And he kills civilians intentionally on peaceful territory. Of course, after that,
И это злит русских.
Yes. And of course, after that, the citizens demand, we need to strike Kiev and Lviv. Enough with the negotiations, and it is very difficult for us in this regard.
Yep. There is a cry for blood in your society when they see something like that. Meaning, you're in a conflict. Fair enough. You're in a war or special military operation, as Russia puts it. And it's one thing for you to hit military targets and accidentally kill civilians. That is one thing. That sucks. Nobody likes that, right? Nobody likes this notion of accidentally killing human beings if you don't necessarily have to kill human beings. It's kind of just a feature of war that's one of the things that happens. It's horrible, but people on some level accept it as a process of the war. It is different, however, when the government intentionally takes on terrorist activities, either killing people, blowing up cars, those type of things, or for that matter, watching a train, a passenger train, that they know is a passenger train, and they blow up a passenger train. That is a different animal. And you can imagine for a population that knows its government is holding back, knows that they have something like the restraint and nukes and much more powerful bombs and missiles and much more military and everything else, that strength is being restrained. Yes, I'm going to go to Dune because I love that series. But in Chapter House Dune, the Bene Gesserit makes this point that says most of restraint, what's the word I'm looking for? Most of discipline is hidden discipline. Effectively, it's what you don't see. It's the restraint. It's your ability to not do something. In which case, the Russian government has shown a hell of a lot of discipline and restraint and responding to many of these provocations that have taken place in regards to terrorist activities. If you've noticed, they're not mentioning the airfield. They're not mentioning hitting the nuclear triad. They didn't mention that at all. From their point of view, this is a military target. Just like I said, it was a military target. Can't complain about them getting the jump on you in regards to a target. Killing civilians, that's different. Intentionally killing civilians, oh, that is a much different animal. That is a much different animal. And in that being a much different animal, you can imagine there is a cry for blood that comes out of that population that the Russian government that has been disciplined the entire time on some level has to listen to, which is the reason. And by the way, it's not that I don't think they care about the triad. I would imagine they do. They're just not going to mention it. They accept this is a military target. We know that Western backers gave them this information. We know that the US is most likely involved. We know all of this stuff. We know that the Brits are involved. We know it. We know it. It's a military target, however. The thing that we're going to focus on is you murdered civilians. You are terrorists. And as such, that you are terrorists, the special military operation and the tenor of that special military operation may need to change. So it's very possible. There's a lot of talk that is coming out of Russia that the SMO is going to be changed into something else, whether a counterterrorism operation, whatever they want to call it, to have some kind of legal distinction for it. But that legal distinction matters. That legal distinction is not minor. It's not just a change of what they call it. There is a difference between Zelensky and his band of Looney Tunes are not targets too. These people are terrorists, and they will be treated as terrorists. Those are two very different legal distinctions, which means Budanov, I don't remember the names of many of the people because some of those people have left. But effectively, the people who are around Zelensky, his circle of troglodytes, will become fair game under that model. Now, we will see if they make that change. It is unclear. I'm going to dig into this further at 8 o'clock hour because we have an open segment, so I have more time to kind of flesh this out. But that video speaks volumes. He's effectively saying there is a cry in this society of a need to respond, and it responds forcefully. And we are listening to that need to respond. Ergo, what has been taking place over the last several nights, this new phase of the conflict. And I know Mark would say, well, I don't necessarily know if this is not just a spring offensive. That may be true, but it looks different. It looks different. When I see Kiev get pounded night after night after night, and to be very clear, these are military targets. Kiev is putting like missile factories and bunkers and stuff like that in the middle of Kiev. And so when they're hitting something, you're seeing these secondary explosions. You're seeing secondary explosions, not because they hit an apartment complex and then it magically explodes again. You're seeing it because they hit a bunker, and whatever's in that bunker, most likely munitions, weapons factories, etc., it blows it up. So you can imagine the amount of Storm Shadow missiles, the amount of help, maybe even Taurus missiles, the facility that Germany was building on Ukrainian soil, that may be gone. Fuel depots blown up. They've been hitting target after target after target with precision, night after night after night. And Kiev woke up this morning still smoking. If you lived in Kiev today, still smoking. And the reason it's still smoking is because they were getting hit with stuff that looked like this. Something just got hit, and of course you heard the impact. This is the night sky. That's smoke. The smoke is darker than the night. Ain't that something? This is what it looks like with a better picture. Here's another one. The smoky skies of Kiev. If Zelensky honestly believed that him going through these terrorist activities because of his handlers, that, hey, this is a great idea. Sad day for you. Sad day for you. And if you believe that Donald Trump, who I want to talk about in the 8 o'clock hour, is going to come to your rescue, sad day for you. Donald Trump has been alienated. In fact, to get across how alienated Donald Trump is, when they asked Donald Trump about something that I strongly suspect Donald Trump knew about, as I keep saying, I will sell my left testicle under the belief that Donald Trump knew about it as a bet. This is Trump, Air Force One. Hey, Trump, Russia's been bombing the hell out of Zelensky. What do you have to say about this? What do you think about this? You going to help out? What's on your mind about this, Mr. President, sir?
The bombers inside Russia, did that change your view at all of what Zelensky, the cards he has?
Well, they gave Putin a reason to go in and bomb the hell out of him last night. That's something I didn't like about it. When I saw it, I said, here we go. Now it's going to be a strike.
Ain't that something? Ain't that something? You help rob a bank with somebody, and you know that they gave you information to rob that bank. You know it. You know they gave you the information. And they say, hey, what do you think about it? Yep, I thought it was a bad idea. He gave him a reason to go bomb the hell out of him. And so, yep, that just sucks. That just sucks. None of the, if you think about it, none of the whole, oh my God, Putin's gone crazy. None of that. He is perfectly aware of this one for whatever particular reason, in a way that he wasn't perfectly aware of the other ones. And so in this one, the best that Trump could say is, because again, he can't reveal his hand. You can't say, well, I knew about this. So you have to distance yourself as far away as possible from what has just taken place that you know was well beyond the pale. And so the best that you could say is, yep, thought it was a bad idea. So he gave him a reason to go bomb the hell out of him. And he is bombing the hell out of him day after day, after day, after day, after day, after day. Whether this is just a summer offensive or whether this is a new phase of the war, I think it's the latter. I think Russia's come to the conclusion that they can't trust the United States. Now, they already couldn't trust the US, but there's something, and I'll hit it now and I'll talk about it at 8. There's a problem with Trump. Trump has a severe defect with all of this. One or two things are true. Either the president knew or the president didn't know. And both of those things are deeply problematic for the position that Donald Trump wants to take as a negotiator, as a peacemaker. I'm just the guy trying to get a deal. This is not my war at all. Okay, either the president knew or the president didn't know. If the president knew, then liars lie, meaning habitual liars lie. I can expect what's coming out of habitual liar's mouth to be most likely a lie. And so in that situation, you just can't be trusted, which is my theory of the case. He can't be trusted. He could be trusted. He was a belligerent in the conflict. He couldn't be trusted in any of these deals where he tried to act like he's a deal maker while ostensibly on one side of a particular conflict. I mean, think of that nonsense. Hey, we're going to have negotiations and I'm going to be your negotiator, even though I'm giving this guy $80 billion. Oh, it seems like you have a conflict of interest, buddy. No, trust me. I'm just the negotiating third party. That's all I am. I am, outside of this conflict. That's Biden's war. Nonsense. Nobody's going to accept that, right? But the Russians will pretend to accept it, considering the lunatic that was in the White House before Donald Trump got in. And so either he knew and lied, which is, again, my theory of the case, or he didn't know. Now, the problem with him not knowing is even worse, because if Donald Trump didn't know, that means that he has no control over his administration. And if he indeed has no control over his administration, then there's no reason to trust him at all. Big, tough man who tells everybody what to do, who fires people left and right, apparently, under that model, the second model, wasn't told something significant that his government was intimately involved in and doesn't have the nerve, the confidence, the balls to go on a firing spree to get to the bottom of why he wasn't told and wasn't told over and over and over again, which is why I don't buy this premise. You'd have to believe that Donald Trump is not told anything, that he's an infant. He has the intelligence of a zygote and everything is being kept from him. I don't buy that premise. But if you want to accept that, then big tough Donald doesn't have control of his government. That is even a worst case situation. And in both of those situations, he can't be trusted. Hence, what is the point of us pretending like we're going to go for some kind of deal? We're going to prosecute the war to unconditional surrender. My guest is here. But let me bring her on. She is the one, the only Kim Iversen. Kim, I don't know if I've had you on the show before, but just to give an intro, she's an independent analyst covering international domestic politics. She has the Kim Iversen Show. It's on YouTube, Rumble. I see you on Twitter sometimes, I think I see you on Twitter sometimes.
Kind of.
Welcome to the show. How you doing today? You doing all right?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Especially, I always tell people this time in the morning, even though I'm not in the States.
Me neither.
I want to
It's
hit.
not morning for me. Otherwise, this would be way too early for me, Jamal, because where I normally would be, it would be either 4 or 5 in the morning. So California's 4 in the morning. It would be 4:15 in the morning. But I moved to Boise recently, back to Idaho, and it's 5:15 in the morning. Yeah. So, but either way, it would be still way too early to do this. So I think you're right. You haven't had me on the show before because it's too early for me.
Fair enough.
But I'm in Italy, So right now, since I'm in Italy, it is the afternoon. It is just 1:15 in the afternoon in Italy. So it's okay. So I can join you.
Well, you lived in California, so California, here we come. California.
I just left. I mean, I just barely moved out of LA just in time to avoid all of this.
This is insane.
I moved in April. Yeah.
This is insane. And this is going to be the iconic picture of this riot.
Yeah.
Dude, in whatever the hell he's wearing, no shirt on, bare chested, holding up a Mexican flag with burning cars around him. By the way, just so people know, that's a Waymo vehicle. Apparently, they have self-driving vehicles in California. And the protesters, rioters, were calling Waymo to get a vehicle there, and they're blowing up and beating the hell out of the vehicle. That is insane.
Well, I mean, at least there was no driver, right? I mean, I guess if you wanted to burn a car, I suppose if you were going to do that, you'd want to get one that you could ensure there was no living human being inside of it, or a possibility of a living human being.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. Because you also have this, was another part of the event in California. This one does have a living being in it, not just a living being, apparently a baby. It's just chaos.
Oof. Yeah.
Like, and I got to be honest with you, even if I accept your original premise that, and on some level I do, right? ICE agents would go into courtrooms, get the judge to evict the ruling, and then drag the person to, for detention and whatnot. Even if I accept your premise that this stuff is over the top, which I do, what the hell is that? And how does that in any way, like, I can show you videos of them raiding a sushi store, like literally a hibachi Japanese steakhouse. It's like, are you serious right now? Raiding an Adidas store, raiding all of this stuff. And what you get is people from the left saying, this is clearly the FBI. And people on the right saying, this is clearly the FBI or Antifa or something else. Meaning, nobody wants to accept that, hey, you can get a riot by the government being overbearing. And you can get a government reaction from that is in the government's best interest. One last point before I bring you in. As I pointed out on Twitter the other day, I hadn't even seen this poll. I said, you guys are playing into Donald Trump's hands, the notion that you are waving Mexican flags on burning police cars, and you think the American public is going to be okay with that? This is the most recent polling that came out from CNN on this issue. And CNN doesn't want to show this poll. But here it is. Donald Trump was -21 on immigration. -21. He's jumped 22 points over the last week.
If we just take a look at the baseline numbers here, this is Trump's net approval rating on immigration. It's gone up like a rocket. Compare now versus 8 years ago during Trump's first term. Look at this. In his first term, Trump was way, way, way underwater at -21 points. But look at this. He's up over 20 points. Now, in the aggregate, he is in positive territory.
Give me your thoughts, Kim.
Well, I mean, I think that in June of 2017, the economy wasn't piss poor, right? We had actually a growing, building economy. And whenever the economy, and then COVID hit, the economy tanked. Under Joe Biden, things did not really climb back. So I think whenever, first of all, I just want to say that this isn't the only thing I have to say. So nobody jump down my throat on this. But first of all, I think that when the economy is bad, we find people blame others. That's just the natural reaction is, who's to blame for this bad economy? Who's to blame for the prices going up? Who's to blame for the fact that we head to the grocery store, we fill up our carts and it's outrageously expensive. The price of homes has gone way up. The mortgage rates are really high. So you can't even buy a house, even if you have the money to buy a house right now. There's a lot going on and people want to point at others for that problem. That being said, Joe Biden in the Biden administration absolutely had essentially an open border policy, right? They were so against Donald Trump and Trump wanting to build the wall, so against Donald Trump wanting to limit immigration, which should be just a natural desire of a sovereign nation, is to have borders and control who goes in and out of your country. So because Joe Biden had that open borders policy, there is this natural reaction of the population that that was saying, okay, now this is causing a huge problem. I don't know, and I've said this when I was a guest on Jimmy Dore's show, and people jumped down my throat. I still don't know, and I've said this on my show, I still don't know if all of the flood of immigrants coming into the country actually had a negative economic impact. I don't know. Now, we don't have the data really to prove that it had an economic impact. We could say, we could deduce and say, well, obviously if cheap labor is coming in and people are willing to do jobs for hardly any money, that's obviously going to drive labor wages down, right? But we don't really have the data to back up that all of these immigrants that came flooding in under Joe Biden. I'm not saying, now don't jump down my throat once again, I'm not saying that it was okay. I'm not saying
speak your piece. Nobody.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it was okay what Joe Biden did and that, we should just let these people in and stop worrying about it. I'm not saying that at all. I do think it's a concern and something we should absolutely stop. I'm just saying when it comes to the economic ramifications of it, I don't know yet. The data's not there to prove that all of these immigrants that came flooding in under the Biden administration actually had a negative impact on the economy. Now, of course, like I said, you could deduce that it would, right? There's ways to get there, but we just don't have the evidence of that yet. So for people who are economically not, people are in distress economically, especially in places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, where the cost of living, which is why I left. I mean, the cost of living is just outrageous. You're paying a premium, like when I really thought about it, I thought, okay, I could buy literally the same priced house in Boise, Idaho, where I'm from, or buy, the exact same mortgage, for example, like take out the exact same loan, same mortgage. And even in Los Angeles, you're still paying a premium of about $1,500 to $2,000 per month on top of what you would pay if you were living in a place like Idaho or Texas or somewhere else. And that's because California has outrageous insurance rates because of the fires and the earthquakes. So the insurance rates have skyrocketed. There's a premium on just cost of living, taxes, property taxes are extremely high. Grocery bills are extremely high. Gas is extremely high. And our utility bills are outrageous in California. So when you put all that together, it's like, you have to sit there and think, is it worth an extra $1,500 to $2,000 per month to live in? And that's for any income level. If you are a server in LA and you're living in a 1-bedroom apartment, I guarantee you it costs you $1,500 to $2,000 more per month to live there than to live somewhere else. It's just, that's the baseline addition. Well, people can't. And so that's why people can't. So people, they struggle. They don't feel like they're in the position of life they should be in. And they take it out on somebody. Now, obviously, the people in LA are not taking the rioters or the protesters or whatever you want to call them. Obviously, many of them are rioting. They're not taking it out on the immigrants. They're not saying it's the immigrants. They're saying it's the government, right? The government is doing this to me. Whereas other people in the country are saying it's the immigrants doing this to me. But my point being, when the economy sucks, people are saying somebody else is doing this to me. And then it causes these, uprisings, these riots. And we just have such an authoritarian government on both sides of the aisle that both sides rise up at some point and start to go insane. I mean, January 6th, we saw a lot of them also get violent. Right. And George Floyd protests, we saw people, people just,
burning down police stations.
There's a human nature to when things get riled up and people get riled up, that they, can kind of revert into this sort of animalistic behavior. But I do think that they need probably some sort of an instigator. And so it doesn't take much for maybe one FBI person or whoever it is, to instigate. And, when I look at all these Mexican flags, I'm like, where did they get these? I don't have an American flag laying around or a Vietnamese flag laying around or an Israeli flag laying around. Like, I just don't have these flags. Like, where are these people getting these flags?
I mean, especially protest and wave them around. Huge. Where the hell did he get a massive Mexican flag from on the fly? Where he's like standing on the police station, standing on a Wamo car, hiding his face. And, it's almost like they learned from January 6th. It's like, hey, hide your face, because everybody knew who that guy's name was. I can't think of his name, it'll come to me in a moment. Right. And he was like, I don't know, I'm going into the White House. I could be dead tomorrow, but I'm going into the White House. It's like, okay, well, that looks bad. when you know that guy, he's on camera, he's saying this on camera, and then for whatever particular reason, the FBI doesn't even look into it. Okay, well, this looks bizarre. That's a hell of a flag that you got there, sir. And again, I'm not saying that
this is now marching in. I mean, this is, whether this guy was legitimate or not, now this is marching in a surveillance state against all of us. So this is how they get us on board with getting rid of our freedoms, with all of us cheering it on. And I can't even, I posted a clip from yesterday when I spoke about this on the show on my Twitter feed, and I got eviscerated by people in my Twitter feed saying, no, Kim, you're wrong. When I was saying, look, this looks like, I mean, they're just going to use this. Like, I don't think the president should be calling in the military to be using the military against American citizens and American cities.
I agree with you 1,000%. He shouldn't be.
Yeah, but,
I mean,
but people are saying, yes, they should. This is different, Kim. Don't you know this is different? That yes, they should.
I don't care what those people say. The reality of it is Trump is instigating. He is. Look, I have to believe, for one, Trump, three things, actually. The White House has no issue. I don't know if those people are pissed off at the economy or pissed off at the way the government is acting on this issue. Donald Trump clearly has, let's say, a bias, and I'm putting it very nicely, a bias on this notion of immigration and immigrants. I mean, for God's sake, he's going after the African American Museum. He's letting in white South Africans claiming that they're being genocided, while simultaneously kicking out Afghans who were effectively working at the behest of the U.S. As collaborators during the Afghan war. He clearly has a bias for one group over other groups based on the way that those groups look. So there's that. Two, H-1B1 visas, Trump doesn't take issue with. And meaning he is allowing indentured servants to come into the United States and take jobs from Americans. And so that is okay. But in this case, we don't like this. We don't like the fact. And I would wager between the two of these things, picking the cotton, picking the lemons, picking the oranges, those are things that I would wager to you that we would need even more. I mean, you would have to pay an American, what, $15 an hour, give or take?
Yeah.
To pick oranges?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is that American going to do that? And,
well, but I'm all for us finding out. If they want to get rid of all the immigrants, anybody that's not legally supposed to be here, fine. Like I say, deport them all, mass deportations, let's do it. Because then, because it will force, I believe, the government to finally do its job, which is fix the immigration system. Because I think if we did have mass deportations and we got rid of all these immigrants that are not supposed to be here, which, by the way, like, look, I'm only allowed to be in Italy for a certain amount of time. If I overstay my welcome, my 90 days that I'm supposed to be here, that, if I don't step foot out of the Schengen zone within, in 90 days, I'm illegally in this country, and I would not expect anything other than to eventually be caught and deported. I mean, that is, to me, a normal, like, what did you think was going to happen, right? I do have sympathy, a great amount of sympathy for those who came over here as children, underage. They didn't have a choice. Their parents brought them over. It's not like they could wake up and be like, hey, mom and dad, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, when they're 3 years old. So I have a lot more sympathy for the DACA kids, and I think that there needs to absolutely be something for them.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think, what, look, you came, you knew you weren't legally here. You should expect to get deported, just like I would expect to be deported from here. And I think we should just do it, like just rip the Band-Aid off, get rid of all of them. And then once we get rid of all of them, we're going to realize, like what you're mentioning, like, okay, now what? Now the price, we are American. Well, we'll find out. I mean, that's the thing is we won't know. We could sit here and we can guess. Like, I don't think Americans are going to want to do that job. Maybe they will, though. And we have to find out. So we have to get to that point, find out what are Americans willing and not willing to do, and then say, okay, this is where we need to fill in the gaps, and we need immigration, and we need this type of labor. And then Congress would maybe get off their asses for once and actually do a job and actually pass some laws and change the immigration system.
I don't know if I agree with you with the illegal immigrants. If you're going to do it, I guess go after people who are criminals first. But they are going after people randomly. I mean, like, it's almost a big show. Obama deported, 3 million people?
Yeah.
And, he is going to beat Donald Trump's numbers still. And so it's like, they're like 14, 15 million people who are here illegally. how much does
Depends
that
on
cost?
who you talk to. I mean, some people say 30, 40 million. I mean,
Okay,
I don't think,
let's go to
yeah,
20
I don't
million,
know.
or let's even go,
Yeah.
let's split the difference, 20 million
Sure.
people. How much is that going to cost? How much of a police force do you need to effectively deal with that? How do you,
Well,
meaning,
but they're
ex-operative-
doing, but the scare tactics working, right? I mean, we are seeing
stopped
lots
coming.
and lots of people. Well, not only have they stopped coming, but I'm seeing people self-deport. Like they're actually loading up all their stuff. It's better for them to just load up all their stuff, be able to take everything with them and go back to Mexico or go back to El Salvador or wherever.
But kicking out students, it's not a scare tactic. That's just being an asshole. And even the Garcia thing, where the courts tell him, don't do this, and you ship somebody to a foreign country, that stuff is outrageous. Like, that's not
Yeah.
even, we're talking about stuff that's illegal. Trump is complaining about illegality while doing things that are illegal, and then lying
Right.
about the fact that he's doing about those things that are illegal. I guess my point is that protest is a reaction to an overreaction by the way the government is acting, especially with this knowledge that Donald Trump has. Again, I'm going to call it a bias on the very nicest as I can be about it, against people who have a particular political, well, let's say, color, persuasion. And
No,
so-
I hear you on that, but I also just think that people in LA would protest anything at this point against Donald Trump and would blow up Waymo cars over
that is
anything.
fair, right?
Yeah, I think
fair.
that this was a trigger, sure. It was just something to get upset about, and it was the thing to get upset about. But I think that, having lived in Los Angeles for over a decade, 15 years or something, the people are just, now there are a lot of conservatives in California, believe it or not. It is still at this point 1/3 of the voting population voted for Donald Trump in the last election. So you are still going to find a lot of conservatives, but the people who are very much against him are very much against him, and they're rabidly against him, and they don't even know why. They just hate the guy. They're just foaming at the mouth, hating him. And I think it just would take anything to piss them off, to get them to start lighting Waymo cars on fire and just being like, Donald Trump did this. It just so happens, though, that the immigration issue is one that they can claim, it's like the thing that, okay, yeah, they're rounding people up and they're deporting them. But, look, like the producer for my show lives in Latin America. I know lots of people who visit Latin America, live in Latin America, all over the area in various different countries. And one of my cousins lives in Guatemala voluntarily. Cool. Like I said, my producer lives in Nicaragua voluntarily. I've got people living all over. It's not a bad place. If you get deported back to one of these places, boo-hoo. Like it's not a bad thing. It's okay.
It kind of depends.
I hate to sound insensitive, but I really don't have sympathy. I just think it's like me getting deported back to the United States. Boo-hoo to me. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that one. I mean, look, the United States is involved in kill squads in these various countries. They have backed narco presidents, like what is the guy named Hernandez, the one who they end up putting in prison in New York when they had a coup of Zelaya. I think it's Zelaya. It's been so long since I talked about this story. Hillary Clinton had the guy taken out in his pajamas and was like, this is not a coup at all. This is perfectly fine. And the guy who they put in ended up being a narco drug lord who the U.S. is now, I think they've deported the guy and basically to the United States in order for him to be prosecuted. He said, I want to get drugs into the nose of every gringo. Okay, well, I agree with the premise. If we stop supporting with those countries and we just don't, like we still consider, Donald Trump is trying to make an argument that Panama should give over the canal because he doesn't necessarily like the fact that there are Chinese investors into the Panama Canal. Okay, who the F are you? And
well, we did build it. I mean, the United States built it. So that was a project that the U.S. paid for and built.
People can build whatever they want. You cannot ignore this capitalism thing at the point where it becomes inconvenient to you to ignore the capitalism thing.
Okay, so look, like here in Europe, a lot of people think that the United States has fallen into full fascism, right? So, I mean, they look at the United States and they just think we're a disaster zone. They see these things that are going on. They see the mass shootings happen constantly, people that are getting shot dead, like that couple outside of the Bellagio yesterday or something. They're seeing all of this and they're thinking, wow, the United States is a failed state. So if they were to deport me, I'm sure there would be people here that would say, "Oh, we can't send her back to that fascist country. We just can't." It's
It
awful
may be
there.
three.
Under
It may be
Trump.
three, Kim. It may be three.
But I mean, it's still it's there. Everybody's got a, anybody could say that country is awful. It's failed. There's issues. Every country has issues, is my point. No, there is no country in South America or Latin America that is so devastatingly horrible that people need to just flee for their lives. I mean, it really isn't like Venezuela,
Really?
maybe, and that is because of the United States sanctions on Venezuela. But yeah, even then, I don't think that there's, besides Venezuela, I don't think that there's anywhere, and even then, there's plenty of people who stay. You always have to think about, yes, there's people that flee, but the vast majority stick around. What kind of conditions are they living in? Are their lives awful when they're sticking around and staying where they're from?
They may.
And remember, I come from a refugee family, and there's people in my life that potentially could be at risk of being deported back to Vietnam. I mean, it's not a bad country.
Vietnam is fantastic,
Half
but
of my
Vietnam is
family
not
still
South
lives there.
America. I mean, and look,
Yeah, it is. I
I'm
mean,
not
it's very
saying-
similar in a lot of ways. It's a communist country. You can't, there's a lot of things you can and cannot say, by the way. If you go to Vietnam, you will not, politically,
Europe. That's true in Europe. Europe just deported 3 or 4 people just because those people have a certain point of view that errs on the side of, let's say,
but
Russia
Vietnam
or
is
being
genuinely a communist country. And, I have family that I talk to on a very regular basis who still live in Vietnam, and we cannot talk politics. You
Fair
cannot,
enough.
the
I'm just
government
telling you,
will
I enjoyed Vietnam.
monitor. No, I'm sure it's a
You
great
come-
place. Right. And so like I said, if I don't feel, unless you're being deported back to like Gaza or Somalia or someplace where it's like a genuine war zone and you're going to be facing famine, I don't think it's all that bad for you to get sent back to your country. Just like if I
That
got
is
sent
very-
back to mine.
That is very easy to say. That is very easy to say. There are people who are living in horrible conditions. There are people who are being threatened by gangs. There are all sorts of conditions that people are living in.
They have to deal with that. I mean, look, like I lived in LA. If
Or
I got
do
deported
they?
back to LA, I'd be going back to these protests and these, and these Waymo cars being lit
Yeah,
on
but-
fire.
I mean, you would be deported back to California. California is the size of literally a country. You can move to all sorts of parts in California. There are some extraordinarily rich parts of California. So that's not a fair comparison in regards to
Sure, it is.
somebody
Every
being
country
deported
has
to
rich
South
parts.
America.
Every country has rich people. Every country
Are
has.
you really comparing California to somewhere that I think that is a dramatic difference between having somewhere that is a state.
Tell
that
me
is
where.
places like Beverly Hills that have all
Where
these
in
beautiful
Latin
places.
America are you totally opposed to someone being deported to? That it's so awful.
Totally opposed. It depends on the
Yeah.
conditions that they came from. Meaning
Well,
it's not
what
an
does it
absolute.
matter? If they were poor in those countries, they're poor, and they need to build their countries.
That's easy to say. I mean,
Yeah,
if I'm
because
seeing
that's what you
somebody
gotta
who,
do.
if there was somebody who was, let's say, under threat of gang violence, and you ask the question, why do so many other people stay? Many people stay because they have family connections and everything else there. I stay in the States because I have family connections in the States. I would
Right.
love to go puttering about the world, etc. I don't do that because I have a mom back home. I hope you get my point. Like, just
No,
because
that's why these people should go back, right? Their families are there, and they should be with their family members.
how do you
And
know they have family?
well, if that's
Why do
where
you
they're
assume that?
from, I would assume if they're in the United States illegally, that's because they didn't bring their entire family with them. They have families still because it was difficult
How
for them
did
to
you
get in,
know
so not
that?
all of them could make it. Well, because it's
How do you
difficult to
know
get
that?
in. Well, were they
No,
all
what I'm saying
crossing
is,
the
how do you
Darien
know?
Gap?
Are you telling me that everybody in the United States has family members that are still alive?
I mean, probably if they're from another country.
No, I'm talking about
Right.
here. Let's just take here for a moment. Every
Yeah.
person that is alive, all 320 million people that are alive in the United States, has family members in the
The
U.S.
vast majority of us do. Yeah, the vast
Okay,
majority
so
of us
that
have
is not
family.
all.
So there's,
I
of
guess
course,
I'm
there's going
pointing
to be
that's not
like,
all.
right, but so you're talking about like these tiny little exceptions to the rule, and even then, if they're from another
I'm not
country and they're illegally in ours, they need to go back. I mean, I don't have sympathy for this.
Just to be clear.
I don't, because there's
I don't
nowhere in
doubt.
Latin America that you could name off that I'm going to sit there and say, yeah, you're right, we shouldn't send them back there. Like that
Just to be
place
clear.
is so awful.
80% of your argument I agree with. Meaning, I don't doubt that the majority of the people who are here illegally, especially if it's like we're coming here for jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fair enough, right? I accept the premise of, but dude, countries have borders, and they have borders for reasons. And what I don't want is people coming in dragging down the income level of the people in America. So
Right.
part of the argument I agree with. I'm pointing out that
But
there
it's
are
more than
exceptions
that.
to that. Go for it. What?
I mean, it's more than that. I mean, we have a culture, I think it's fair for countries who want to preserve a particular culture and a particular ideology or particular flavor, of whatever it is. I think it's fair for countries to want to vet and ensure that the people that are immigrating in and allowed to stay in and Europe is way more staunch on that than the United States. I mean, the US has been very like,
What they used
come
to do.
on in. Yeah, like Germany, for example, you want to stay in Germany, you need to learn German. I mean, they require it. You cannot be in that country past 3 years without
I'm
having
glad you
learned
mentioned that. Do you
German.
realize they are importing Syrian head choppers into Europe as we speak? I can show you the video where they're effectively saying, "Yeah, we're bringing them in. Everything is perfectly okay. We're
Yeah,
pulling in
and
men from Italy."
and people are upset about that. And the countries, though, have had regulations that have required, they're relaxing on that, and that is what people are upset about. But they
Why
have
do you think
had
Oman is pissed off? Why do
what's
you think
that?
Slovakia is pissed off? I'm pointing out that this Germany or this Europe that you're talking about that is so hard-headed, like heavy-handed on the immigrant thing, is not. I've been to Austria.
No, they haven't
I've
been
to
right. But what
Germany.
I'm saying is that they've had rules in place that are much more, to maintain their culture than we've had in the United States. And whether or not they're, whatever they're doing right now in their kind of neoliberal importing of all these people in, that's kind of beside the point. I mean, they're doing that, but that is going against many of their own regulations and rules that they put in place that we've never put in place, is my point. I'm saying that we can put those in place. It wouldn't be totally out of left field to put those things in place because Europe had done it for a while prior to Europe having the current crisis that it's having. But so the United States, I think countries, my point being, countries can, and it's fine if countries want to put some limitations on who they're accepting in. I'm a bit hesitant, to be quite honest with you. If somebody is running from a gang in South America or Latin America, I'm a bit hesitant to let them in because why are you running from the gang? You're going to come in here. Is the gang going to come here looking for you? I don't want the gang here at my door. I don't want them in my house.
I don't know. For me, it depends. Like I said, I agree with like 80% of your argument. Like if it's, I believe in borders. I believe the country should have borders and countries should vet who comes into the country. I thought that's why Joe Biden's policy was so ridiculous. Because Joe Biden was like, hey, just sign into my app. And you could fill out my app and then you can just right on in. And it's like, dude, are you out? It's like, are you insane? Are you out of your mind? And then like certain countries that didn't have relationships with the United States, there was no way to vet who was coming into the country. So it was basically a black box of random people coming into the US. It was very weird, like in the way that Joe Biden was doing it. And then, he'd be like, no, we're strong on the border. That was Kamala Harris's argument, right? I'm strong on the border. Just don't come. So I'm not an ideologue on this issue, but I do have sympathy for a country that has taken decades of using South America as if it was part of its territory and footstool, and spent time overthrowing governments, destroying governments in those countries. I mean, for God's sake, we went after country, knocking over countries, putting in dictators in those countries left and right. How long does it take a country to recover from that? I was looking at this graph where an economist did with it, Pinckney did, where he was talking about South America, or let's say the global South, and how the global South relates to Western countries, and how Western countries effectively raped those countries for like centuries. And that if it wasn't for that, those countries in the global South, Europe would have been a debtor nation. The US would have been a debtor nation. Well, it is now. But meaning this relationship that has taken place is a direct result of many times colonialization and the way that we've effectively treated those nations, not just as a byproduct of those nations. I'm pointing out.
Hey, I mean, man, you're preaching to the choir. I'm Vietnamese.
Yeah. But again, I agree with like 80% of what you're saying. I don't disagree with you entirely. It's the exception that I take issue with, where it's like there are conditions where I would be like, let the guy in, have a heart.
I mean, it would have to be the asylum. I have much more sympathy for the Afghanis who you mentioned, who were basically collaborators with the U.S.
Oh, they're
government.
going to get strung up if they go back. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got to stay. You can't send collaborators back in a war, during or after a war. I mean, you just can't do that. So I have a lot of sympathy for that. And I'm totally with you. I understand that the U.S. has collapsed many different economies. Look what we're doing actively to Venezuela.
Yeah.
We have done a lot of the damage to a lot of these countries, including Vietnam. I mean, like really.
Yeah.
So, but I still think that those countries, for one, oftentimes the people that leave, these are the best and the brightest of the country. I mean, they're the ones with the most gumption. They're the ones with the ambition. They're the ones with the guts, right? They're going to go and they're going to build a better life somewhere else. So those are actually the people you kind of want to keep around so that they'll help you build your nation back up. And I don't, how long does it take for a nation to build back up? Well, how long did it take Vietnam? 30 years from the time that the sanctions were dropped and the time that it has been, the trade has been allowed between the United States and Vietnam. It's been a 30-year process. So 30 years is how long it takes. So
that's argument for China, right? With the Chinese students. Because if you look at the ones who are like the top engineering students, especially in like not software, maybe software, but definitely like manufacturing, those type of things, those are Chinese students. And Trump is effectively kicking those students out. And you would have people in China saying, we don't want you to leave. We would prefer you to stay in China because you are effectively a brain drain. Even though many of the top students around the globe are from China, we would prefer you to stay here also. And it's like, yeah, man, but can you really tell? Like, talking about culture.
But those aren't illegal immigrants, right? I mean, those are...
They're not illegal immigrants.
Right.
The Chinese students aren't illegal.
Sure, but he's also trying to... I think the idea is give America back to Americans. And then let it shake out. But you kind of have to go through that first in order to figure out where the holes and the gaps are. And we don't really know because we've been just importing people in, whether it be illegally or legally or through HB1 visas, like you mentioned, which I have a problem with those. I mean, at this point, the U.S. needs to shake it all out. And then just see where we're at. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with this shaking it all out and seeing where we're at as a country. And then saying, oh, well, it turns out we actually need these engineers from China. We actually need the HB1 visa workers, unfortunately, like these companies claimed. We actually need all of these immigrants that are coming in across the border to work on our farms. We actually need this, and then we can actually make those adjustments.
Those companies are lying. And the fact of the matter is I want students coming into this country. I mean, I have zero issue with students who are going to be a benefit to this country, come into this country, because those people tend to stay. And you get, like 40% of immigrants building businesses in America?
Yeah. I don't know if the Chinese ones will. I think at this point, they'll go back to China. Have you seen China?
Well, yeah, because Donald Trump is effectively pissing them off.
Well, not only that, but I mean, when I do regular, like those YouTube video walkthroughs where people just walk through cities, and I just like to watch these kind of walking city.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Cities are gorgeous.
China is amazing. I mean, even areas where they claim are poor, there's walkthroughs of those areas, and they don't look that poor. I mean, China is amazing. And my cousins who live in Vietnam, they go to China regularly. And they say China it's like, I have one cousin he's Chinese, and he has been going to China for decades. And he's like, the amount of change that China has gone under in the last 30 years is like night and day. You don't see homeless people, and the joke was, we were at dinner and one person in my family says, you don't see homeless people because they hide them. And he was like, in homes.
Right.
Right.
It's such a change. It is such a change. I mean,
Americans it's very clean and it's extremely futuristic. And they say, they say that China is incredible, but they do say as well, and this is my Vietnamese family living under communist Vietnam, they say, but the Chinese are less free than the Vietnamese. Even though Vietnam and China are both communist countries, the Vietnamese will say we're freer than China. That China has to clamp down quite a bit in order to get to that level. They've had to squash a lot of dissent. People are not, you know, those things are true. And that is according to my family that lives in that part of that world, that lives under a communist country, communist government, you know, not an American talking point. I know people want to make that like, oh, Americans are always just trying to say that people in China aren't that free. Try living there, blah, blah, blah. I'll talk to a lot of white Americans who are expats in China, and they'll say, no, it's free, it's fine. They don't really know because they're not native Chinese. Like, yeah, it's different when you're native. And my cousin, who's married into the family, and he's Chinese, is natively Chinese and lives in Vietnam now. And they say something a bit different, that it is not as free as people think.
And I know that sounds weird. I'm just trying to split the baby on this because I think it could be a little bit of both.
Yeah,
if you agree, like for example, if you're a Democrat and you are living in a Democratic city, you're fishing water. Like you agree.
Yeah.
And because you agree, you're not pushing any boundaries. It's just, oh, I'm free as a bird. Everything is great. Oh, yeah,
but if you're a Republican living in California, you might feel a bit different, right?
Yeah, right. It's like this fascist dictatorship,
great point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, because there is a middle ground, right? There is a space of both where if you have like 90% of the Chinese saying, yeah, my government is competent, I agree with what they're doing, they may actually agree. In which case, they don't see the water.
It's always different being foreign in a country. Like here in Italy, I could totally live here. I don't know anything really about their politics, right? You know, I don't speak Italian well enough to like really know what's going on, and I don't care. You know, I'm just here enjoying, like drinking my Aperol Spritz and eating my prosciutto. Like I don't care. So you know, I love it here. It's different when you're a foreigner. You're not thinking of the politics to that detail, to those levels. That somebody who's born and raised and understands everything and has seen the evolution of things. It's a very different experience for natives than it is for foreigners.
I would worship Maloney. She is gorgeous. That woman is gorgeous. One of the guys, I can't think of where the guy was from. He was from an African country. He like kneeled when she came. And the guy was like, why are you kneeling to her? It's like, dude, look at her. She's gorgeous. I was here in Malaysia. One of the guys, he said, somehow we got on the subject of politics. And as we're talking about politics, he says, you know, if you criticize our prime minister, the police will come to your door. And the guy had me in stitches. He was like, they'd be like, hey, why are you ragging on our prime minister? Don't you know he's doing the best for you? He's doing as great as he can for you. I said, no way. He says, yes, they'll do that. They would come knock on your door and he would effectively take you away and they would effectively browbeat you saying, why are you talking shit about our prime minister? It's the funniest thing in the world. But you don't know that when you are a visitor and a guest.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll have to ask my other cousins. I have Malaysian cousins also who are Malaysian citizens still. I'll have to ask them if that's
I like it here. I mean, it's nice.
Yeah.
People seem to be cool. But I felt that way about Albania, even though, you know, long as you don't bring up NATO, you're fair game in that, like in Albania, right?
Right.
Depends on what
Malaysia is a majority Muslim country. My family's like a minority Buddhist, Chinese natives from Malaysia. And but it's a majority Muslim country, and
no bacon.
No bacon.
That's the downside. No bacon. No bacon.
Meanwhile,
That's
here in Italy, I got all kinds of pork.
The food is so good. Yeah, the food is so good. I want to hit you another time. What time is it? Okay, we spent a lot of time talking about that. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. Greta Thunberg. This flotilla. So I had Lath on the show yesterday, and Lath pointed something out that I guess I didn't think about, but he's absolutely right. I have gotten so accustomed to Israel just killing and blowing up pretty much anything. And Lath said, he says, what do you think the best case scenario is for that flotilla? And before he could even say anything, I would be if they killed Greta Thunberg. Meaning if they sink that boat with Greta Thunberg and those other activists on it, that is the best case scenario for their objective in pointing out, look at how insane the Israeli government is. They just murdered these Europeans, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And he's like, well, what do you think the best case is? Or the worst case? The worst case is this. It's effectively what took place. Where,
I don't think so.
Let me show you this picture.
Okay.
I want to show you the picture real quick. This. Greta Thunberg smiling as an Israeli soldier gives her something to eat. Now, people could say, well, you should be feeding the Palestinians. 1,000% agree with you. 1,000% agree. But coming across as reasonable is always a better perspective as coming across as genocidal maniacs.
Yeah.
And they didn't blow up the boat like they did the first time around, which they did. The first time they effectively just blew up the boat. This time around, they're like, here's bread. Here's something to eat. And she's like, oh, thank you. She should have never taken that picture.
The worst case scenario, I mean, who knows what she was actually saying or thinking or what, and who knows.
That's true. I'm just saying that picture.
Bread in there. They probably photoshopped that bread in there. I think the worst case scenario, I guess, for the objective would have been if the Israelis escorted them to the shores of Gaza, let them drop off the aid.
That's true.
And let them turn around and go back and said, look, we're letting aid in. Thanks for the aid. Thanks for dropping it off. And we gave you a military escort.
That is a good point. That is such a good point.
Yeah, that would have actually, then people would have been like, oh, and all the pro-Israeli people would have been able to say, see, they let her drop off the aid. Now they're with their selfie yacht, and look at what they've done. And the IDF escorted them and ensured that they got there safely, and they were able to drop off their aid and go back to Europe. And that would have been, I think, but Israel didn't do that. Instead, I still think what happened was pretty bad, which is Israel decides to intercept no Hamas on board, no weapons on board, just humanitarian aid, decides to intercept it and say, how dare you try to go against our blockade, which is AKA our attempt at starving the Palestinians. How dare you actually try to give them food? And then they try to give these freedom people food, which I'm sure none of them took it. And, gave them food and water and was like, see, look at how nice we are and how great we are. And we're going to give you medical aid and we're going to give you food and water. And it's like, why aren't you doing that for the Palestinians? That's the point.
It's like, you're not Palestinians.
Yeah. And so that's why you're willing to do it.
If you are, it bugged the hell out of me. I asked this guy to come on for a UFO topic. And the guy was like, no, because you hate Jews. I was like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, it just caught me off guard. Because that is not the way my mind works. For me, Zionism is a political movement. Israeli government is a government. I can criticize any government. Sure. Right? And I went back and forth.
I also think you don't have to like a religion if you don't want to like a religion. That's one thing I don't understand is like, why do you have to like, there's a difference between the individual and what the individual believes. Like, you don't have to like conservatives. You don't have to like liberals. Like, you don't have to like Jehovah's Witnesses or Jews or Mormons. Like, why can't you not like?
I get that. I guess my thing is to break it down into an entirety of a religion feels, because to me it's the individual. Like, you can have Christians who are assholes and some of the nice people in the world. And so it's like, I don't know how to skate that line of, I don't like this entirety of.
Right. You would say, I don't like religion, but it's not like I don't like religious people. Right?
Yeah, right. It's a little strange. And I guess it caught me off guard. I don't hate anybody, right? I just, like, for me, is if you're burning kids alive, whether you're a Nazi, whether you are an Israeli, whether you are ISIS, who are putting people in cages and burning them, I think it's fucking horrible, right?
Right.
And so,
but I do think that Zionism, and this is something that actually Dan Cohen has been arguing about on X, and I've kind of jumped into the argument a little bit, but didn't really get much of a response back. But he's been arguing with somebody about. There's somebody he's been arguing with who says, no, Zionism is part of Judaism and you can't separate the two. And Dan says, no, that this is what Zionists, the real anti-Semites, that's what they want. Like the Zionists and the anti-Zionists, how did Dan phrase it? He was basically saying that, so the pro-Zionists will use that argument because they're like, if you're against Zionism, then you're against Jews, right? So they like to conflate the two. They conflate because they're trying to turn everybody into an anti-Semite. And then he says the anti-Semites use it because they also, they're claiming that they're anti-Zionist, but they're then conflating the two, and then they're against Jews because they're conflating. But I disagree with him. I do think that, unfortunately, Zionism is part of Judaism now. And that can change. I do. I think it is. I think it's part of the religion. If it's taught in every single synagogue by every single rabbi in America, it's part of your religion, whether you like it or not. Religions evolve constantly. And over time, religions will drop certain viewpoints. They'll gain other viewpoints. And in that time, you, the individual, don't get to say what your religion believes. That you can, like there's Catholics, for example, who believe priests should be able to marry. Okay.
Mhm.
There's Catholics who believe women should have the priesthood. But even if they individually as a Catholic believe that, it doesn't mean Catholicism believes that. Catholicism doesn't.
I
What's
accept that.
taught in the churches is that priests are men and that they cannot get married. That's what's taught by the church. That's what's taught in every single cathedral throughout the world, right? Even if individual Catholics might feel differently. So
Yeah.
as an individual Jew, as Dan is, he may feel like Zionism should not be part of Judaism. But my point is, too bad. It's taught in every synagogue to every single Jew when they're little. That's what they're taught by their rabbis. So you can't separate the Zionism from the Judaism.
Oh.
That can change. Yeah, I don't think it's part of the actual
I disagree with
doctrine,
this because I've had conversations with
change.
Rabbi Shapiro, and
But
Rabbi
he's an
Shapiro
odd
makes it-
rabbi, but he's like an odd one out that isn't accepted by the rest of the, his rabbinical viewpoint is not mainstream nor accepted by the mainstream. So you can't go by the
I
fringe.
accept that. I do accept that on some level. But there's a historical context to a religion. Like, for example, Christianity. Christianity, how many people accept all of the tenets of Christianity in the United States? They would call themselves Christians, and yet they have sex, they may smoke dope, they are
Right.
dicks during the week, and yet they go and pray on Sundays, and they call themselves Christians. It's like, okay, but there's still a continuity, like a cultural context built into it that goes beyond the individual thing that those people do, regardless of what the preacher teaches and everything else. I guess, and look at all of the Jews that are out there protesting. Are we really trying to say that all of those people are somehow also Zionists? I don't think that's true.
If they want to continue to identify as Jews, which I don't think they have to, because I believe it's just a religion, it's a belief system, and that's it.
There's no difference between those things.
What's that?
There's no difference. It's an ideological distinction. I mean, there's no difference between those things.
It's like Catholics. My family's all Catholic. When was the last time they went to church? I don't know.
Right. right.
I mean, there's like a cultural, of course, religions kind of develop cultural norms within the religion that then people carry. Like Mormons is a very good example of this. They'll have like family night on Mondays. You got plenty of Mormons who know, and they don't watch rated R movies or drink caffeine or coffee or any of that. You got plenty of Mormons who no longer believe in the religion, but they're still culturally Mormon. Their family's still Mormon. They're culturally Mormon, and they still do a lot of the things, and they understand the lingo and the things are different. So there is a cultural aspect to it, but inside the synagogues, what is taught today is Zionism. And that until the minority Jews at this point who don't want it to be part of the religion, if they can gain footing and actually change the tide, then I do believe the religion can change and no longer be Zionist. So it's not like it's inherently Zionist. It is Zionist at this point. It doesn't have to be Zionist in the future.
God, I so disagree with you on this, Kim. And I think there is a lot of Jewish people who would chafe at that argument that you're making.
They can all they want. It's taught in the synagogues. I mean, until they can get all the rabbis to stop teaching it in the synagogues, I don't know what to tell them. It's part of their religion. I don't get to dictate what I left the Mormon religion. I don't get to dictate what the Mormon religion believes or teaches. And when it made a shift, when it got a new leader, I shifted away from it because I didn't like what they were teaching anymore. That's just the way it is. If you don't like it, you got to leave it.
That's your take. It's not the way it is. Those are different things.
A lot of people, Catholics do the same thing. When the priests were found out to be molesting the little boys, lots of Catholics left the church because they didn't like the way the Catholic Church handled it. When you don't like so people have left the religions for a lot less than genocide, for a lot less than chosen one ideology.
Right. That's true. But those people, pedophilia wasn't a part of pedophilia and Catholicism, even though the priests were pedophilia. Even though the priests
it
were
wasn't
pedophile.
part of the actual,
And
that
even
one
though
wasn't.
you had
But
a
with
church
Mormons,
that was literally moving them around in order, meaning you had a church structure that was effectively protecting pedophiles.
Right.
But
Okay. So that might be a bad example. Like even just the last the Pope who passed, a lot of Catholics did not like that Pope. They felt like he was way too liberal. They didn't like what he was teaching in the church.
I love that Pope.
And a lot of Catholics left Catholicism because they didn't like the viewpoint of the Pope. And
screw those people. That Pope was awesome.
Yes, like some people liked him, some people didn't, right? And you don't get to dictate. I mean, the problem with what those Catholics understood, and what I respect, is that they didn't get to decide what the pontiff was up there teaching. They didn't get to decide. So what their only choice was, do I stay or do I go? And they chose to go. And maybe they're coming back, but that's your choice. You get to choose whether or not you're going to believe what the majority is preaching and teaching and what your religion is preaching and teaching at that time. And if you don't like it, I mean, look, if enough Jews walked away and said, we're not Zionists, we don't want this taught in our synagogues, we don't want this to be part of our religion. If enough of them actually walked away and said, we're converting out of this, then they would probably change and they'd probably stop teaching it in their synagogues.
There is a continuity among religions, among ideologies that goes beyond an individual teacher of that ideology. Meaning the Pope can have a point of view and the Pope can teach things a particular way, but it doesn't really touch what the body of knowledge of Catholicism over the course of how many years, hundreds of years?
But Zionism is part of Judaism. It's just what you're disagreeing with is the interpretation. Yes, it is. It's absolutely in there. It's theologically in their belief system. The only thing that you're debating is how it's interpreted. That's it.
No.
So you're debating the interpretation. They do believe that all of the children of Israel have to they have to gather. Now, like Shapiro, Rabbi Shapiro believes that that's in your heart. And the others are, and this is the same, but this is the same, this is also when it comes to Christianity and dispensationalism, Catholics are not dispensationalists. Many of the Christians that are Zionist Christians. That is you're debating the ideology of these Christians. This is not a political viewpoint that's been inserted into these Christian religions. This is their actual interpretation of the end of times.
My argument is that Zionism is a political movement every bit as much as Democrats, Republicans are political movements.
And I don't totally agree with that.
They have fused that stuff. Like, for example, Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King will call himself a Christian, and he was. And you would often see these kind of political traditions come out of religious teaching. So you get Islam, and you have people who fanatically push back on, let's say, certain, aspects, using Islam as the religion and tip of the spear to do it, just like Christians in the United States. So you get a Malcolm X in the US pushing back on the US government in a political movement, same thing. I'm saying that Zionism has fused itself with Judaism as if those things are exactly the same for political reasons, not just because Netanyahu says this is the state of Israel for all of the Jews, doesn't make it the state of Israel for all of the Jews, and all of the Jews agree with his political philosophy of things.
The way that they were able to insert themselves, the way that the political Zionist movement was able to gain steam and insert itself into the synagogues and into all the rabbinical teachings is because they adopted, as part of their political ideology, they adopted a Zionism that actually took scripture, that took ideology, and said, this is how you should be interpreting it. That it's no longer in your heart, you should gather in Israel, that Israel's the church. Because the interpretation is, and this is the same, so non-Zionist Jews and Catholics have the same interpretation of the scripture, which is, so Rabbi Shapiro and Catholics would have the same non-dispensationalist viewpoint of Zionism. And that is that Zion is the church, and that all the children of Israel need to gather in the church. Right. The dispensationalists, those who are Zionists and now Zionist Jews, interpret that differently. And they scripturally and religiously interpret it as they need to gather physically in Israel, in Jerusalem. So this is an interpretation of religious scripture that has been adopted by the synagogues, by the rabbis, and they're teaching it to the kids. And so,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, finish.
Yeah. So my point is that, it's not a political. Yes, I agree with the beginnings of Zionism, how it all started. There was a bunch of like non-religious Jews but they got together and they hijacked. They figured out, they were very smart, so they figured out how to insert their political movement into religion and get people on board with it religiously. The problem is that it doesn't matter how it started. The fact is that the rabbis are all teaching it in the synagogues, and they're teaching it as scripture, and they're teaching it as just scriptural fact for all of these young Jews. And so It doesn't matter how it started.
I so
look,
disagree with you on this.
you know, if your priest is teaching it in your church, then it's part of your church. Whether you like it or not, it's part of your religion. And your choice is you can either leave your church or you can stay. You can try to band together and get your church to change their ideas. That has happened in time. Many churches have changed their stances on particular things. And Episcopalian Church is one that, you know, over time started allowing women into the priesthood. That was something that was demanded by the congregation, the Episcopalian congregation, or they wanted gay marriage. So they started allowing gay marriage because the population, the congregation wanted gay marriage. You can make changes within your religion and that causes an actual shift within the religion. But until you've done that, it's, you know, your religion's your religion. Your choice is to leave it or you can, and I commend the Jews that want to stick around and remain Jews and vocally be anti-Zionist, because I do think that they potentially, if there's enough of them that get together, that they could potentially change the tide, turn the tide, and maybe the synagogues and the rabbis will stop teaching it.
What percentage of Jews do you think are anti-Zionist versus Zionists?
Not very many. The vast majority are Zionist, 85% at least.
I don't know what the number is.
It's, I think, 85%.
I don't know what the number is.
I think that's an accurate number.
Yeah, I don't know. I greatly disagree with this because I don't think. Okay, I greatly disagree with this. You made your point though. I don't want to back and forth because I want to get one more thing before you leave. What time is it? What time is it? Okay, one more thing before you leave.
Okay.
I saw this on your channel, and I wanted to get your take on this because I've been fascinated by this dynamic of people who have left the Biden administration and then all of a sudden got a conscience. And whether it was, what is it?
They
Matt
didn't
Miller's
get a conscience,
circular?
Jamal. That's not what happened. They didn't grow a conscience. They're trying
I'm just
to get
calling
a
it that,
job.
right?
Right.
Right. They just need a job. So you get Karine Jean-Pierre, the historic gay, lesbian, etc., White House speaker, who now is hawking a book and is, quote, leaving the Democratic Party in order to hawk that book. And apparently Democrats have opened fire on her for this, but she's like, yeah, I'm leaving the party. I don't like the way you guys treated Joe Biden. And she is still lying through her teeth and she is losing her mind. Like when she is making this argument that, well, when I saw Joe Biden, he was sharp and it was a firing line and, oh, they treated my president so bad. And it's like, dude, did you see that debate? Like, were you just not watching the debate? Like, meaning they are making this argument that Donald Trump was the devil himself, the devil incarnate, that Satan was walking, bestrolling the globe as a Galactus, taking down things. Yeah. And that man named was Donald Trump. And he was going to put people up against the wall. He was going to shoot Liz Cheney on a firing line. He was going to just destroy the world. He was going to run for 50 terms, all of this stuff. And yet the man who they were going to put up for that was Joe Biden. And Joe Biden decided he didn't want to get out of the race, despite the fact he couldn't string two sentences together. And everybody and their mama knew that Joe Biden was cognitively damaged. It was like Weekend at Bernie's. And then the information that comes out later is AutoPen. There's that. Jill Biden was apparently running some of the meetings. The staff of the White House was keeping people away from Joe Biden. And it took a whisper campaign by Obama and, let's say, an inner circle to get rid of him. And he's now pissed off at some of these other Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, Obama, and whatnot, who had the whisper campaign to get him out there. They lose to Donald Trump. I would strongly suspect that Joe Biden is happy as a lark that they lost to Donald Trump. I can't prove it, but if they stick his body up and they can find a pulse and put a lie detector on him, I'm pretty sure it would show that he's like, I knew it. I told him I would. He still thinks that he would have won that race. Joe Biden could not even. I've never seen a debate performance that bad, ever. And yet, you get Karine Jean-Pierre saying, oh my God, it was a firing line. I can't believe they treated them this way. I've never seen anything like it. So she is out here hawking a book. And she comes out and says, this is in addition to Matthew Miller, who effectively said, look, man, I don't think it's a genocide, but I do think Israel committed war crimes. So it's okay. So you effectively lied about a genocide for years. And your response to this is, well, I was just doing my job. You could have resigned, right? So this is Karine Jean-Pierre selling her book.
This fall, called Independent. It's coming out on October 21st, so please do grab it. And the reason I wrote this book, coming out of the White House, you know, serving as White House press secretary was an honor and a privilege. But since I have left, the people that come up to me, strangers that come up to me just across the country as I'm traveling, and sometimes right in my neighborhood, at a grocery store, supermarket, airport, my daughter's school, the number one question they ask me is, Karine, how do we get out of this? How do we protect our democracy? How do we protect vulnerable communities among us? What do we do next? Because we don't have answers here. That's what they ask me. And this is my answer. And what I mean by that is, in an era of misinformation, disinformation, the regressiveness of social policy, what we're seeing currently right now, what I have decided to do, and I really have thought long and hard about this, is to follow my own compass. And that's what I've done. And that's what this book does. And here's the truth. And here's how I will lay it out to you.
Oh, here's the truth.
I think we need to stop.
I can't hear you, Jamal. You're on mute.
This pose, when people do it, is usually somebody lying. They're trying to plead for like something.
Yeah.
But okay.
She's like, well, I'm going to be honest. Oh, you're going to be honest. Fine. Tell us. What are you going to be honest about? Finally.
Thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes.
Oh, yeah.
And not be so partisan. And the way that
I'm going to stop this right here. Do we honestly believe that her politics has changed?
No.
And she,
No.
like, I'm always amazed when people say that. It's like, oh, I'm just going to get out the box, man. And I think we need to stop with these two-party system. Okay. So have you changed any of your political positions? No, I have not. Okay,
Well,
then
you
how
hear
the
what
hell?
she says. She sits there and she says, if you agree with me, then I got space for you. I mean, that's essentially what she says. Look, if you agree with me, then we're all good. We're all good.
Yeah.
We're all good.
Yeah, give me a take on this. She's just hawking a book, right? Like all of these apologists have now come up with Joe Biden. Is it because Kamala Harris lost?
Well,
is that what it is?
Yeah, I think they're all trying to scramble to save their jobs because they were part of a really failed administration and then a failed attempt at a second, a different administration with Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And it was all such a failure that I think there's a real fear inside the Democratic Party, which they should be afraid, that there should be just like a full-on clean house, right? Just full sweep clean house, get rid of everybody, start fresh, and rebuild the party. And the establishment Democrats don't want to rebuild, but they see the writing on the wall that they're going to be forced into this, like, what are we going to, they're going to be forced into change. So I think a lot of these players, like you've got Jake Tapper, I know he's not part of the administration, but he did the same sort of thing. You're seeing a lot of these people, I think, just scrambling to save their jobs and save their futures. Like, we want to be a part of whatever's next. So we condemn. Now they're kind of like, we condemn that last. I don't know. It was terrible. I'm not part of that anymore. I'm now independent.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. The Democrats are, as popular as head lice. And I don't know how I do know. Transparency, radical transparency. We screwed up. We're horrible. We didn't represent anything. Yeah, I don't see them doing that. And I don't hear that coming out of her in this either.
No, I think Democrats are going to continue to fail until I think that their only path forward is President AOC. I think that is who they have, which I don't even like AOC.
So.
I don't like AOC at all. Yeah, I don't like AOC at all. But I do think that that's their only path forward. They don't want to do it. I think that they're slowly converting her. I mean, she's been converted quite pretty much to establishment.
Yeah.
But I do think that, but I do think she's still rogue enough, kind of like a Trump, that if she were in power, she'd kind of do her own thing and she'd be like, I'm in charge now. And I think they know that. So that's why they're not allowing her to move into a position of power. But I do think that the Democrats' next winning candidate, not that she would win the presidency, but I do think there's a real possibility she would. I do think the Democrats' next winning candidate is AOC. Yeah. And until they figure that out, they're going to lose. But I don't want her to be president because I think she is a fascist.
I can't stand this woke stuff.
Right.
And I think it misses the point of this kind of economic populism that I think they require. Like this. Go ahead.
And my point is with AOC, because she is the one, she was the queen of, like, we got to stomp down on misinformation. We got to, there's all these things that she wanted. Right. So she's, to me, a very, very scary person. And that's why I'm always bringing up, like, look, you like Trump sending in the National Guard into California, do you? Are you going to like President AOC sending the National Guard into Texas? Are you going to be okay with that? Because every tool you give Trump is a tool you're giving to AOC when she's president. And I do believe she will be president of the United States. I do. I think she is the next Democrat winning candidate.
All right, I'm going to mark that down. Is there a year prediction for this?
I don't think it'll be this next one. I think a Republican will win again. And I think that Republican might get another term after that. But then I think it'll be AOC. So I think JD Vance, like, let's just say JD Vance is next in line. You know, and he ends up winning the primary because Republicans will have a real primary. I mean, they're not going to just hand it over to JD Vance or hand it over to whoever. I think they're going to have a real primary, and there's going to be Republicans battling it out. And I think it could be like Marco Rubio, who ends up getting the nomination. I would much rather JD Vance than Marco Rubio. Kennedy might even vie for it on the Republican ticket. You know, there's Tulsi Gabbard might go for it on the Republican ticket. You've got a lot of open doors, I think, on the Republican side. So they're going to have a real true primary. But whoever it is, they're eligible for 2 terms. So I think that they'll get in. I think if Trump doesn't screw it up, which he might, then, you know, I think a Republican is likely to win again. That person is likely to get a second term because they usually do. And then I would say AOC. So what is that? That's like 15, 11 years. Yeah. 11 years from now. No, it wouldn't be 2040.
That's not right. Listen, if it's 2024 now.
Well, we have 3 more of Trump, and we have 8 years of whoever's next. So 11 years. So you're looking at a decade. Like in a decade, I could see her. They might be smart and they might stick her in there, though, on the second term, which is what I think they'll do. I think she'd become the candidate. Like, let's say JD Vance wins this next term, going up against JD's reelection. I think they would put AOC in, and that would be tough.
If they're trying to burn her, only if they're trying to burn her.
She might win. Depends on how Republicans do. What's that?
Because most presidents win, as you point out. Like most presidents win both terms.
But not always. I mean, but not always. And so, 3 terms of Republican. That's rough. You know, I'm not sure if.
Yes.
So there is a possibility that she could weasel her way in there, and win. And I think Democrats. You know, I hate to say it because I really don't like her at all. I'm really afraid of her. I do think she would rip freedoms away from us. But I think that the Democratic the voting population is one that would absolutely vote. I think if they want to win, and I think they would have a good shot at winning if they actually put her in there. Not right now, but yeah, I don't think the next one either. I don't think she should run in the next one against whoever the Republican is going to be. But the next one, but after that, yeah, I think we're going to see it. I think she's going to be the next. I think she's going to be. I think she is going to be a Democrat president.
First female president of the United States, AOC.
I mean, I don't know. I think that Republicans very well might put the next one in as there could be a woman who runs on the Republican side that wins.
Oh, you think Tulsi Gabbard? I don't think they trust Tulsi.
I don't think Tulsi, but there's plenty of others that I think they could put in there that would do well. And,
like Nikki Haley. Oh, she's terrifying.
I mean, not Nikki, but somebody, but more anti-establishment that would maybe do well on that side.
Wait, somebody maybe we don't even MGTE. Like who would that be? I don't know who that would be.
No, I don't think it would be MTG. I think she turns off too many people, even though I actually like her for the most part. I didn't like what she said about the protests in LA. She's like, send in more troops. I'm like, really? You didn't like that for the J6ers, but now you want that for this.
right. None of these people are consistent. None of them.
No, none of them are. I don't know who it would be. I think we'd have to wait and see, because I think there's still room for people to develop and grow and kind of get in there. And you never know. Midterms, and there's new elections and new people come in, and who knows? I mean, Obama was only a junior senator. So, I mean, it could be, anybody that we don't even know yet. But I do fear an AOC presidency, but I do think that is inevitable.
Kim Iversen, thank you for staying with me on this. You and I swear, man, every time we come on the show, we fight. Or every time we're on the show together, we fight.
I was actually telling my dad that, because, what's funny is that I'm in Italy right now, and I'm actually where I first discovered you, and it was 6 years ago, because my dad, I was staying with him in Italy back in 2018. And
Yeah.
the way that I found out about you and the way that I even got involved in doing all of this is because my dad would walk around watching you on his iPad every day. He'd watch you on his iPad when you had Progressive
Every time you tell me
Soapbox.
that.
And he would walk around the house, and I knew he was getting ready to watch you because he'd hold his iPad and he'd go, "Hello, everyone." And I was like, "Oh, Dad's about to watch tomorrow." And that was while we were staying in Italy together. And so now we've come full circle. Like, here I am in Italy, where
How is
like
he, by the
staying.
way?
He's great.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's-
Please finish. I interrupt you. I'm sorry. Please finish that
no,
part.
yeah. But I'm actually even in the same apartment as
Are you?
as I was in when I first started watching you and discovering you and all of that.
It's a
Yeah,
full
I'm like
circle.
same. Right. Yeah, we are full circle right now. But
I just started back my show again.
but I
like
was
full time?
telling my dad and my sister, who's with us this time, and I told them, I was like, "Yeah, I'm going on Jamal's show," and my sister doesn't know you, and my dad's like, "Oh, cool, all right, cool." But my sister was like, "Well, who's that?" And I was like, "Well, whenever I go on Jamal's show, whether it be when you were on Sputnik or wherever, I was like, we always disagree, like we always battle it out, but it's always respectful." I showed her a video of you, and she's like, "Oh, he's really calm." I was like, "He is very calm, and we always disagree." But it's always
usually
it's a
it depends
great
on what it is, but
disagreement.
usually.
It's like
Oh, that's
having
funny.
a good, healthy disagreement with somebody and not hating each other, or we're still friends. It's still like, this is the healthy way people should do it. They should learn from this.
Oh, I've been unhinged on that show. God, man, I remember when I first started on Sputnik, I got in a fight with this guy. And the guy said, like, "If you say another word, then I'm leaving." I said, "Well, I guess you're leaving then." Like, it was that bad where it was like literally the guy just left the show. It's like, okay, this is not
Oh,
sustainable.
you're always nice to
Find a way
me.
better do this.
I mean, we disagreed
well,
all the time, but you were always
Yeah, but it wasn't. Our COVID arguments were rough. But besides that, everything else was fun. Kim, thank you for this. And by the way, when I say rough, I don't mean horrible. I just mean
No. We we definitely did not agree, and we still don't agree on a lot of things.
By the way, my
sounds like,
audience
but it's okay.
agrees with you on the COVID thing. They completely disagree.
Oh, do
with
they?
me. Oh, they completely disagree with me on the COVID thing. They
Well,
completely
you were
disagree
wrong.
with
So,
me.
hey.
Kim Iversen. She is Kim Iversen, independent political analyst, host of the Kim Iversen Show. You can find her on Rumble, YouTube, as you put it out, Twitter. Is there anywhere else where people can find you, just in case I'm missing something?
That's pretty much, that's the bulk of it. That's the bulk of it right there.
Kim, you have a fantastic trip. Enjoy.
Thank you.
All righty. Have a good one. All right. She has hit a hornet's nest. In fact, I probably should have told her, because there are a shitload of comments. And usually those comments don't come in to the end. In fact, let's go through the comments now. Let's see. There's a ton of these things. Mr. Riffley, the immigration situation in LA is the same play the elites are running on Ukraine. Some trick, different border, same trick, different border. This is the wrong conversation. No, that's Kim's point of view. Like, her point of view is, look, you guys are effectively having this fight while they are simultaneously using this fight to take rights away from you. So, unless you mean that they're having a wrong conversation in regards to what they're fighting over. I mean, look, yes, her and I got into a microscope on it. But if you notice, her argument was exactly the same. It's like, dude, they're going to use this in order to just rip away your rights. That's what they're going to do. So when people are saying send in the National Guard, okay, what do you think? If you're going to allow this, that it sets a precedent for the next president to do it, that's a Democrat. And if you remember, Democrats kind of did do it. I mean, what they were doing to J6ers, where those people were sitting there without a trial, sitting there without the capability of seeing a lawyer and stuff like that. Well, some of what I guess they did. Or even the prosecutions for Donald Trump. Trump is obviously using this for his own political whims. It has nothing to do about whether this is necessary, and for that matter, whether this makes it worse or better. I don't think he cares. I think he's using it for political dancing. Don't forget due process, Black Spock, and there's that due process. Taraka, please talk about the people coming here. What did America do to their countries, such as Haiti? I did bring that up. This idea of we are destroying their countries left and right. We've toppled those governments left and right. And then for America to turn around and say, don't come, that's pretty rich. Agreed. Black Spock, Central and South America. Yes, but Haiti counts also. I mean, what Clinton did to Haiti is atrocious. What France did to Haiti is atrocious. The double indemnity, where they had effectively had to fight out of slavery and then pay France for the slaves that they had to liberate. Oh, it's just outrageous, right? Haiti has, I swear, gone through it. America, fuck these countries. Oh, fuck these countries up in the past. Taraka. I mentioned that. Yes, you are right. Last 66. You're crazy if you think Trump takes cheap immigrant workers from farm owners in the United States. We await Afrikaner immigrants getting the H-1B1 visas for their cheap black workers from South Africa. You forget that racist people are ideologues. And what I mean by that is, yes, Trump will get rid of immigrants in the United States. That's cheap labor, even if we need that labor, because of the way Trump thinks. He seems to be racist to me. I mean, the notion that you go after a black museum is astonishing to me. Bringing in Afrikaners from South Africa, claiming that they're under a genocide, as Donald Trump pays for an actual genocide, should tell you something of the person that will come to that particular assessment. That is not, hey, this is a sane, rational person that is looking at the world in reality-based terms. This is a racist human being that is looking at the world through racist terms. I hope you get it, right? It's one thing for the person to say, hey, man, I'm not racist. It's another thing for me to look at your point of view of reality and come away with an assessment. The guy was like, you hate Jews. And I was like, you're out your fucking mind. And I'm like, what are you getting that from? He shows a tweet of mine where I'm saying something about, it's like these Nazis or so on and forth. As I stand by that tweet, everything I said in that tweet is true. If you are burning kids alive, whether you are ISIS or burning people alive, whether you're ISIS, whether you're Zionist, whether you are Nazi, same difference. Same difference. And I will be against you for it. And I would have zero issue calling you a Nazi in a situation. If you act like a Nazi, I'm going to call you a Nazi. Fair game. I stand by everything in that tweet. And eventually I told him, I said, look, I think you're a horrible person. I said, and as such, me thinking you're a horrible person, I also think you're on the wrong side of history. And so you probably think the exact same of me. So let's just call this a day. I don't have to, there's nothing in me that even wants to talk to you in this situation. So let's just call this shit a day. Let's go to the next one. The last 66, we'll see. I do think he is going to go through with those deportations. I am tired of listening to her. Taraka, oh, Kim is awesome. Kim is awesome. Black Spock, my issue with Kim is she thinks the United States is the good guy. You can't be the good guys if you're built slavery and genocide. She's an immigrant, or at the very least, her family was. It's how many immigrants do you know that think the U.S. is a bad guy? And I don't even know if she thinks the U.S. is a good guy. She thinks we're obviously helping a genocide. And she obviously thinks, like, I don't think, look, her and I argue every time on various issues when she comes on and talks about her. I don't know if that's her take. We just disagree. And you could have a disagreement on immigration. I got to be honest with you, though, most immigrants, at the very least Cuban immigrants, even people from various countries in Asia, they do have, see, I don't want to speak for it because I don't know what's in their mind. But many of them do look at the U.S. in that way. I mean, I can tell you, I met this guy, it was a UFO channel that I used to go on. And he took issue with the fact that I used to work on Sputnik. And as long as it never came up, we never had an issue. But the moment something about the Russians came up, he was foaming at the mouth. He didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. Like, that's his immigrant status that is speaking on his behalf, as opposed to somebody who is born, raised, every generation, back hundreds of years, coming from here, having a different take. So I don't know. I don't know if she thinks of us as the good guy. I think she would take issue with the policies that we're doing around the world in many respects. Hell, I think she would take issue with what we're doing in Ukraine. I think she would take issue with what we're doing in Israel. I don't think in either of those situations she thinks we're the good guys. So it's too simplistic to say that she thinks America's a good guy. I don't know. I don't want to speak for her. I'm cringing at speaking for her on this one. Kevin Wayne, get Jerry's take on China on your show. British expat who lives there. Kim is so far right. She even thinks the U.S. Green Party is evil. She does not think the U.S. Green Party is evil, and she is not far right. Dude, I call myself a lefty. And I call myself a lefty because oftentimes on these issues, I find myself on the left. If you talk to me about women or men in transports, I'm going to say, I think you're out of your mind. I think it takes over women's spaces, especially after talking to actual women about it, who feel some kind of way about it, that it takes over women's spaces. It's unfair to the women that are there. And you get people on the left saying, he's transphobic. Sure I am, if that's what you need to believe, right? I guess my point is, you can have a take that is not politically derived, that somebody who is fixed in a political context is going to see it as being on the left and right. That is the Democrats' issue with Joe Rogan. They keep saying Joe Rogan is a right winger. Joe Rogan is not a right winger. Joe Rogan voted for Bernie fucking Sanders. And you have other people who also voted for Sanders, who they say, those people are clearly right wing. They're not right wing. They just are Americans who have a certain point of view of the world that is not firmly ensconced in a political context where you have a list of menu items that you have to agree with in order to be part of that. That's just Kim. She just has her own point of view. She has her own mind. So, no. So China has something like a 90% approval rating among its people. Competence, pulling people out of poverty, all of those things are true. By the same token, there is not a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a pathway to walk. Well, both things are true, as I pointed out. If I'm liberal and I'm living in California, I may think this is fantastic. Get rid of, we should have more censorship. We should be attacking Ukraine right now. We should be doing that stuff. And you say, this is fantastic. I don't see what you people are talking about in regards to censorship. You wouldn't see it. You're fish in water. Competence and people with a political or cultural disposition may agree on those items, in which case there is no wall right there. We just agree. This goes on for infinity. But you can have other people there who don't accept that take, who sees a wall. I see a wall in the censorship thing. I see a wall in Europe kicking people out of Europe, or for that matter, them going after and arresting people in Europe because they don't necessarily have their own political or carrying Europe's political point of view. I see a wall in the way Republicans are acting around Donald Trump and their dear leader, where, oh, we have all of these issues about this. And then when the same situation happened in reverse, they're okay with it because it's dear leader that's doing it. I'm saying, if you have an independent point of view, you get hit with it both ways. It's just this channel just so happens to be further on the left. And so when you're seeing her, you guys are looking at it as if, oh my God, she's right. She's not a right winger. She's not a right winger. She's not a right winger. But look, I would love to have, what is guy? Jury. Who is Jury? I don't know who Jury is. Email me Jury's information. I would love to bring Jury on. I would love to bring him on. Yeah, I love to bring Jury on. I'm not against it. Black Spot, Panama has more than paid enough for the canal. It belongs to Panama, not the U.S. And it is in Panama, yes. And the people who have died building that canal, yes. And let's be very clear, you can't change from being a capitalist government just because it all of a sudden is against your interests, right? It's like, oh, we believe in capitalism, and so we're going to have investors and all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, we don't like those investors are Chinese. Get the fuck out of here. You can't pull that shit. It's in Panama. Panama can make the laws and rules of Panama. If Panama decides that it wanted to, as a government, make a governmental decision and annex the Panama Canal, you can do that. It's Panama's canal. The U.S. can't come in and Bigfoot another country for something in that country. Just like if anything went on where we can say, we're using eminent domain to accept that, we're going to pay you X amount for it, and it's now ours. We can do it. It's a country. We're a government of laws, and government overrides this capitalistic nonsense. Kim believes in child gender reassignment. No, she doesn't. No, she doesn't. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. Dark Bushido, I don't buy that. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. To be fair, I've never talked to her about it, but I don't buy it. 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 I don't buy that. Dark Bushido. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy that at all. RT is taking Trump's side on LA. I know they are. I know they are. I know they are. As you've heard, I've been complaining about RT recently. I didn't check out RT more so than Sputnik. The colors are kind of aggressive in Sputnik. But they are. And I've taken issue with the fact that they have. Because I think a lot of it has to do, and I brought this up with Mark, and Mark is right, to be fair. When Mark points out, look, there's not a tether between these two. It's not like there's some overlap, but it's not, hey, go out and do this. It's not built that way. At least the American version, it's not built that way. In the American version, even on RT, or for the matter of Sputnik, we didn't have that leash wasn't tight. And it may be I'm a fish in water, fair enough, kind of the same way, right? That I'm talking about people living in a country where I don't see a wall here because you're not doing anything, but there needs to be a wall. It could be that, fair enough. But I fundamentally agreed with the Rush position on foreign policy, so there was no issue. On this, they're out of their fucking minds. And I think the reason why they're taking Trump's side on this, I think it's two reasons. One, we're talking about Russia, right? Will the Russian government be okay with protests like that? Hell no. Hell no. Hell no. Hell no. I'm telling you, working for a Russian company, and they would be like, you know, especially these countries that were part of the Soviet Union. It's like, that's not the way we think. The government says, don't do this, you don't do it. Otherwise, you get crushed. So there's a cultural aspect to it. There's that. The other part to that has to do with, I honestly believe that these guys are trying to make nice with Trump. I can't prove that. I honestly believe it. I can't prove it, but I believe it. Yes, they tend to be doing that, and it's aggravating to me. Agreed, Kevin Wayne. Kim said that she hates women, hats the GP on Sabi. What? Kim said that she hats the GP on Sabi. I don't know what hats the GP is. Green Party. Oh, hates the Green Party. I need to see the context. I would need to see the context. The reason why I say I would need to see the context is because it's very possible that her issue with the Green Party wasn't, I need to see context. I need to see the context. Yes, I would defend Kim because I think she's awesome and she's always been nice to me. And there is a tendency for people to dislike people for one or two issues when overarching or overall, we're all just human beings that are a grab bag of issues, some of which you agree with and disagree with. And so obviously, every time Kim and I are together, we argue. I don't know if there's been any time together where we haven't argued. But I respect the shit out of her. Love her to death. She's always been cool people. So there will be things that we would disagree with. Lord knows. Why y'all throwing her under the bus? Restless Native, yes. I am saying the same thing. Yes. Why are y'all throwing her under the bus? She is fantastic. I like Jill Stein, but I made Jill switch with the Green Party. And it could be that. Like, I was sitting at a Green Party rally once, and one of the guys from the Green Party comes in, and he's very angry and upset. And he talks about how the Green Party couldn't pay for their own building to have a meeting in. And it's like, dude, what is the hell? What is the point of this? What is the point of this? We can't even afford our own meeting. It comes across almost like a grift. Now, especially from the standpoint of the presidential thing. Now, I don't think it's a grift. I think they're trying to hit the 5%. But it's like, how do you hit the 5% if you're only doing what you've always done and you're only getting the same results? And it's fair to say that the Democratic Party and Republican Party have gamed the system in order to make it difficult for you to make inroads. That is true. I accept that. But what are you going to do? Lay there and bleed all day? Is that what you're going to do? Bleed all day? Like, what is it? Politics or what? You have an objective. And if that objective can't be accomplished, and you're just saying this objective can't be accomplished, then why you continue to take people money? And I'm not saying that to go against the Green Party. Obviously, I voted for Jill Stein, but nobody expected Jill Stein to win. Like, there has to be something else, or they have to do something else. I don't know what that is, but I don't know her rationale for it, which is why I'm saying I don't know what her motivation was. I don't know what it was. So I don't know. She is a fantastic guest. She said she hates the Green Party on Saturday. No, that's not the part. Go right ahead. She said it on Saturday. No. I am not saying that you're wrong. If you are saying she said it, fair enough. I'm saying I don't know the context. I don't know what the context of that conversation was, where she said it. If you take a 3-second clip of me saying something and you say, "Whoa, he said it." Okay, well, what's the other 15 seconds? What's the other minute? What were they even talking about? I'm saying I don't know what that conversation was, one way or the other. I'm saying I don't have context. I'm just saying, don't have context. I mean, look, if your objective is, if the point that you're trying to make is, hey, she said this, and so I should what, dislike her? I mean, dude, people have opinions I disagree with. I don't hate the Green Party, but what am I supposed to be mad at her if she does? Come on. Green Party had horrible takes on COVID. All of you disagree with my take on COVID. Please have Kim Iversen and Manila Chan on the panel. That would be awesome. I would love to have Manila on the show. Manila has never decided to come on the show. She says it is too early in the morning for her to come on to the show. Either that or she dislikes me. I don't know which one it is. Either case, she doesn't want to come on the show. I have tried. People get their feelings hurt too easily. I don't even know how that hurts anybody's feelings. It's just you disagree. There's a difference. There are some disagreements where we're going to have that are going to cut deeper than others. All right, I want to get to other parts. Thank all of you. I appreciate it. Like I said, she hit a hornet's nest. That is not a negative thing to hit a hornet's nest. That means people are engaged one way or the other, even if they dislike it. I want to hit this topic before, what time is it? God damn it. I'm not going to have time. All right, let's try to go through it anyway. So, as I pointed out earlier today, I'm going to play this clip and I want to go into it just a little bit because I want to nail this down before the end of the show because I want to cut this as a segment. This is Rick Sanchez. Rick Sanchez is apparently in Moscow. He's doing God's work in Moscow, and this is a fantastic interview. But I want to play what he's saying here because this is larger significance in regards to what is happening on the ground in Ukraine.
Indeed, our population, our citizens demand much harsher actions from us. It was very hard for us to go to the second round of negotiations. When Ukraine deliberately, on the day of our departure, blew up a passenger train and civilians and children died. You see, sometimes when a missile is aimed at a military target, electronic warfare is used, the missile is deliberately redirected, and it explodes, hitting a neighboring house. This is part of war. This is tragedy. Sometimes when a missile is shot down, debris falls on residential buildings and people die. That also happens, but it's terrible, but it's part of war. When a passenger train is moving, in my opinion, a double-decker, it is visible from afar. A huge passenger train, and the person who blows up the railroad and the highway manually, seeing this train, presses the button. The button was pressed manually. And this is terrorism. This is not a train with tanks. It's not even a train with fuel. It's clear that this is a passenger train. And he kills civilians intentionally on peaceful territory. Of course, after that,
И это злит русских.
Yes, and of course, after that, the citizens demand, we need to strike Kiev and Lviv. Enough with the negotiations, and it is very difficult for us in this regard.
Just think, after they blew that train up, they had to go and sit in a negotiation with Ukrainians with Nazi patches on their shoulders smirking with their Nazi patches on their shoulders. And Russia, after they destroyed that train, after they had the nuclear triad, after they cut all those train tracks, after they had the Crimean Bridge, they sat there and they said, here's our terms of surrender that we're giving to you. What do you want to do? If you notice, there was no bombastic statements from Medvedev. There was just silence coming out of the Kremlin. And what Russia's decided to do was to respond, as he pointed out, a cry from the public. If Zelensky honestly believed, him and his handlers, that blowing up railroads, killing people, civilians, intentionally, which is exactly what they did, by the way, that was somehow going to shake a Russian government that when under the Soviet Union lost 30 million people in one war, and 10 million in the other war, not to mention how many ever died in the Napoleonic Wars. My point is, if he really honestly believed it, then he is dumb as a box of rocks. And there's a reason that they keep him around beyond the fact that they may have legal reasons for not offing him, or at the very least putting him as a legitimate target. And part of those reasons may full well come down to how stupid Zelensky is. You've only done one thing: harden the Russian resolve. And by hardening their resolve, what I mean by that is the population, where you have a population that was already sick of negotiations, that already didn't believe that these negotiations were legit, was going to happen, for whatever reason could not accept. Why are you playing around with these fools? Finish the war. In which case, Putin was the man of restraint and discipline. And as I pointed out, the Bene Gesserit saying, real discipline, or most discipline, is in restraint. It's the hidden discipline, stuff that you can't see. This ability of saying, I am going to hold off the dogs of war. I'm going to keep this as a special military operation. The fact of the matter is, it seems that that has changed. Not just last night, not the night before that, not the night before that, not the night before that. For the last week, Russia has been on a spree of attacks that have them moving faster on the front lines, but have also been hitting military target after military target after military target all across Ukraine. I've shown the videos from the various locations that they were hitting the other day. Last night, Kiev woke up to being in flames. And I mean that in the most literal sense of the word. They woke up to smoke billowing from Kiev. And just to show some of these hits, or just for at least one of these hits, because I don't have a huge amount of time. But this is just smoke coming out of the Kiev from where Russia was hitting factories, hitting oil depots, hitting airports, hitting effectively anything that was a military target that they were hiding in Kiev, hitting bunkers where they were holding weapons, Storm Shadow missiles, I suspect Taurus missiles, hitting what is French Scout missiles, meaning they knew where that stuff was being held. And they intentionally sent munitions to blow it up. That is what they did. And that was effectively a bomb blowing something up. This amount of smoke and everything else is not coming from them hitting an apartment building. This is hitting bunkers and bases that they were effectively hiding in civilian territory. That is what they have started to do. They have started to open up a can of whip ass in a way that they did not before up to this point. It is very clear that they were restraining themselves. And for whatever reason, Ukraine, I was going with this assessment that this is the best that the Russian military can do. Not so much. The fact that they've shown you the Reznik missile, the fact that they have nuclear missiles and they weren't using any of those things in the context of this war, the fact that they were having a war of attrition where they were slowly moving as opposed to having these kind of grand movements and everything. Again, they were being restrained. It seems that the context of this war as a special military operation may be changing. And it seems that you have a much more aggressive Russian military that's willing to go after these targets to decimate the Ukrainian military. There was a cry for blood that was coming out of the Russian population. And yes, they can be disciplined and they can also deal with that cry for blood. And there's a pathway between the raindrops that you can walk to try to do both of those things. And I suspect what you're seeing in Kiev, where they are hitting military target after target after target after target, is them doing that. Hell, them hitting targets in Kharkov, Odessa. Here's another one, enemy hideout, where the Okay, I don't know what the fuck that is. I hate when they do that shit. They play this blaring music over top of people getting killed. There was a target in Kharkov where the people effectively ran into a barn. The barn gets hit, and all of them were effectively wiped out, face of the earth. Same thing in the Dnipropetrovsk, where they effectively made gains in the Dnipropetrovsk, raised the flag over the building, using military munitions and drones to hit the military targets necessary for them to move into the areas that they needed to move into, making their first incursion. I know Mark said they've been there before, fair enough, but an incursion into Dnipropetrovsk. Trump has an issue. Trump has an issue. And it's part of the reason that there will be no help coming for Zelensky in this. Zelensky has been in a bunker screaming and crying for Donald Trump to effectively save his ass. Now, as I played this once before, when Donald Trump was effectively asked about this, Trump, who I strongly believe knew about this military campaign, said this: "Hey, Trump, Russia's opened up a can of whip ass on Zelensky. How do you feel about that? Are you gonna help him out?"
The nuclear bombers inside Russia, the airfields. Did that change your view at all of what Zelensky, the cards he has?
Well, they gave Putin a reason to go in and bomb the hell out of him last night. That's something I didn't like about it. When I saw it, I said, "Here we go. Now it's going to be a strike."
The nuclear bombers inside Russia, the airfields. Did that change your view at all of what Zelensky, the cards he has?
Well, they gave Putin a reason to go in and bomb the hell out of him last night. That's something I didn't like about it. When I saw it, I said, "Here we go. Now it's going to be a strike."
Here we go. Now it's going to be a striking. Now all hell is going to break loose. Trump's problem is, as I said before, two things. Either he's lying about that, which I think, or he's not lying, which is worse. If Trump is lying, then habitual liars lie. And as a habitual liar, he is lying. He's trying to distance himself. He wants to be this negotiator, and he wants to claim that this is not his war, despite the fact that in every other context, whether it's with Gaza or for that matter Iran, he's acting like he's some kind of deal maker. You're not a deal maker. You're a party to the conflict. If you're paying 80% of the money for a genocide, then you are a party to that genocide, and pretending that you're not is nonsense. The same thing here. If you are the instigator to this war, meaning the United States, and if you're the reason that this war is continuing, which is what Europe and Ukraine thinks entirely, then you can't act like, "I don't have anything to do with this." You do. It's your war. Own it. The other situation is worse. Either Trump doesn't know about it, because what that means is Big Tough Guy doesn't have control over his own government. And Big Tough Guy not having control of his own government is not going through the steps, like firing people and going after people and outing certain people who've effectively been hiding information from him in order to get control of his government. So the guy who made his reputation for being the one who fires people can't bring himself to fire anybody who apparently has been hiding information from him in the way that they apparently want us to believe. It is humiliating if that is true. And so, no, I don't believe that's the case. I do believe that Donald Trump was aware of it. I would imagine that Russia believes Donald Trump was aware of it, and they're going through this pretending that it's all the Brits. It's all the Brits. Okay, it's all the Brits, if that's what you want to say. Either way you look at it, both of those things means that he can't be trusted, which means that the notion of going through some kind of negotiation through the United States is a fool's errand. And I suspect that's part of the reason that they've stepped up the process of effectively going through this military campaign, and this military campaign getting more aggressive to this notion of what we need from you in this moment is an unconditional surrender. And yes, we're making inroads into Sumy City, and we will have a referendum in Sumy, where Sumy will become a part of the Russian Federation. And we are looking at Kharkov. And Kharkov will also at some point be a Russian city when we get 30, 40%, where we can have a referendum, meaning you are being taken apart, and taken apart at a faster speed than what you were beforehand. Because it seems up to this point, whereas initially the idea was trying to get some kind of negotiated settlement, it's the belief, I suspect, that that is off the table. And that what needs to take place is effectively a forcing of an unconditional surrender. If you force an unconditional surrender, you can get Odessa without having to take Odessa directly. I hope you get my point. Meaning an unconditional surrender gets you what you want. How else will you get them to acknowledge those regions as being Russian territory? How else would you do that short of some kind of unconditional surrender? One last point. That's another point. Trump is alienated. There will be no support coming for Zelensky on this very specific front. And if Zelensky even said anything about it, any notion of weapons, meaning if Zelensky said Donald Trump knew about the campaign or knew about the thing, any support that you think you might have gotten from the US, up in smoke. So not only have you alienated Trump, where he has effectively distanced himself from you, you can't even push him to acknowledge that you knew anything about it. Let me bring in my guests. I am joined with the man himself, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. We are waiting on one more guest, but I want to bring him in while he's here. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, he is former distinguished professor, visiting professor at the government and public policy at the College of William & Mary in Williamsburg. He has also taught for 6 years in the University Honors Program at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He is, and probably best known as, retired United States Army Colonel and former Chief of Staff to the United States Secretary of State Colin Powell. I hear the other guest is here, so I want to bring him in also. You guys are my first panel. I don't think I've had a panel on this show before. On the radio, we had it all the time. Dennis Fritz. He is retired Commander Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force. He is currently the director of the Eisenhower Media Network, EMI, with the mission to promote peace and diplomacy over war. While on active duty, he served as principal senior advisor to 4-star commanders at Pacific Air Forces and Air Force Space Command. He also held additional duty as senior enlisted advisor to commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, effectively NORAD. He is author of Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing this morning? You doing okay?
Pretty good. Well, I'm doing well, and it's always great to be with my good friend and colleague, Larry Wilkerson.
Excellent, excellent. I am so glad that both of you can join me. Like I said, I thought you two would make a fantastic panel. And so I thought I'd bring you on and hit you with a few topics. The first topic I want to hit has to be information that has been coming out recently. This is Donald Trump, and he's asked about enrichment for Iran. Now, again, I chafe at this because I'm like, pardon my language, who that for you to tell another country or sovereign state what they can and can't do? But either way you look at it, they've been in negotiations. Iran has effectively said, look, enrichment is our red line. We are going to enrich on our home soil. We have every right to do it. We'd cut down on the amount of enrichment. Hell, we'd take it down to 3% if that's what we need to do. But this idea that we are going to be dependent upon you for nuclear fuel, meaning we're going to build nuclear power plants and then have to be dependent upon you for it, is off the table. We're a sovereign state, and we're going to remain so. Donald Trump was recently asked about this because it becomes clear as day that Iran is not accepting Donald Trump's nonsense proposal that he has been putting out on this very specific issue.
You know what that is?
This is Trump answering questions on this issue.
We have a meeting with Iran on Thursday, so we're going to wait till Thursday.
And what's
for
the
that
main
proposal.
impediment to getting a deal?
Well, they're just asking for things that you can't do. They don't want to give up what they have to give up. You know what that is. They seek enrichment. We can't have enrichment. We want just the opposite. And so far, they're not there. I hate to say that because the alternative is a very, very dire one, but they're not there. They have given us their thoughts on the deal, and I said, it's just not acceptable.
This is pretty astonishing to me. They seek enrichment. No, they don't seek it. They already have enrichment. And Trump was militarily defeated by Yemen. Again, you can kill a lot of civilians, but if you can't accomplish your military objectives, then you weren't able to accomplish your military objectives, especially if you have a country that spends $1 trillion a year on the military compared to whatever the hell Yemen spends to build those rockets. Let me go to you, Colonel Wilkerson, first. Give me your thoughts on this. I mean, this seems like a fool's errand. Iran is not going to stop enrichment. At the end of all of this, there's still going to be enrichment. Does he really believe that he can change that process?
Jamal, this is truly I won't say insane, just a dramatically stupid situation. If you back up just a moment, and I know this is hard to do, we've just seen the Israelis, for example, in international waters intercept a ship with Greta Thunberg and others on it trying to take humanitarian supplies to Gaza, and no one doing anything about it. And that just to preface the fact that the real problem in the Levant, in the Middle East, in Southwest Asia with regard to nuclear weapons is not Iran, it's Israel. Israel is not a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They are not, they don't recognize the additional protocol or the safeguards agreement. They are an outcast nuclear weapon state. And we made them so, and we backed them. Now we're dealing with a country that is what? 20, 30 times the size of Israel, stretches across vast territory, has a 5,000-year history, 90 million people, most of whom are homogeneous in terms of their population, would be were we to attack them, for example. And we're telling them, who are a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, a treaty we worked hard to achieve, do recognize the additional protocol, do recognize the safety agreement, and have been inspected by the IAEA for years. Israel isn't. And so the problem is Iran. Well, that's the first illogical part of this whole mess. Yeah. The second part is, as you were alluding to, they're a sovereign nation. Sorry, empire. They're a sovereign nation. And though you are doing your best, along with your henchman, Israel, to destroy all remnants of international law left in the world, including the organization you helped set up in New York, the United Nations. Since you're doing that, you might as well finish it off. So let's just go ahead and do this. And let's say things like Donald Trump just said, absurd things like they have no right to enrich. They have spent billions of dollars, much blood, because Israel has assassinated a number of their scientists, nuclear scientists, to get this program going. And to enrich at least to 3.7 or 3.67%, whatever the specific numbers are, is their perfect right. So, Donald, I would say back to you, were I'm a foreign minister, Arachi, or I were the Ayatollah or the president of Iran, I would say, sorry, Donald Trump, the sine qua non of agreement is at least we get to enrich to the legal amount we're authorized. Sorry, that's the starting point.
If Jamal, if I can make a comment to that, and first let me give Larry some credit. We had what we call the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, which was the better known as the Iran nuclear deal, which Larry had an opportunity to give some input to the Obama administration on, and so, and in fact, to fight against the Israeli lobby who were against that. It was a great plan, and we. The United States of America under Donald Trump broke that. Now, what I will tell you, as you stated, Jamal, so passionately, what gives us the right to go in and say, hey, what you can't do when we have nuclear weapons? Larry mentioned about Israel having nuclear weapons, but we have nuclear weapons. So what gives us the right to tell someone they can't have it? Also, I will tell you, if you look at Libya, who gave up their nuclear program, and look what happened to them. Opposite of that, you look at North Korea, who has a nuclear program, who we're scared to touch now. And so I would tell you, just my personal opinion, first of all, if Iran wanted a nuclear weapon, they would have had it a long time ago. And then also I will tell you as well, if I was them, I probably would do one just for deterrence, just for deterrence alone. So that's my little bit to that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Let me just add one thing to that, Jamal, because I think it's an important point. When I was dealing with then President Ahmadinejad in New York, when he came to New York for the UN General Assembly meetings, I had the responsibility to brief him on a certain aspect of policy that we wanted him to consider, an incidents at sea agreement in the Persian Gulf. Well, that was a fairly decent conversation. I then met with his foreign minister at the time, who speaks fluent English. And he looked at me across the table that we were sitting at, and he said, what do I have to do to convince you that our fatwa is ultimately sacred to us? Islam does not think nuclear weapons are weapons people should have, states should have. We will go to and this is his exact words, we will go to the United Nations Security Council and operationalize. And he looked at me and said, "You're a military guy, right? You know what that word means." Operationalize our fatwa in front of the world, in front of the UN Security Council, and say that nuclear weapons are anathema to our religion. Therefore, we don't have them. I believed him. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't some people in the background, and Dennis is right, that would make a more realpolitik decision and say, hey, we need one just to keep that bastard state up north of us out of, or to the west of us out of the consideration of our security, because that's ultimately the number one thing for any state, especially a state in Southwest Asia, and especially a state that has Israel as an enemy, a sworn enemy. They're always talking about Iran being a sworn enemy of Israel. Worse the other way too. Who's going to attack Iran quicker than anybody in the world? Bibi Netanyahu. So I think that's a part of it too. That is a part of it we don't recognize, because Islam, if I may say so graphically, is anathema to us.
That's a really good point. Give me your take, and I'll go with you, Commander Sergeant, on this release that apparently came out where Iran was able to get their hands on all sorts of data on Israel's nuclear program. I mean, they've been able to get all of this apparently secret information. And with that secret information, I've pointed out very pointedly, we will hit your nuclear targets, meaning we would hit your nuclear silos if you indeed strike us. Don't mess with us. And apparently they obtained, all these classified military scientific documents on Israel's nuclear program. Give me a take on that. Is that enough of a deterrence? Or, as you point out, because look, I agree with you, right? I would have had a nuke just to protect myself from these lunatics that are trying to take me over. But is that enough, though? This idea of we will hit your nuclear silos, we will hit your nuclear program because we know where your nuclear program is. Is that enough to deter Israel on this?
No, I don't think so. It would deter them. Let me just say this first. When I first heard that surprised me a little bit, all the information they had. And I'm sure it probably surprised Israel as well. Wow, that was really a big surprise to me. Now they're trying, you've noticed Israel's a little quiet on that too. Last I heard, they had not made any comments about that. And so I'm sure they're surprised. They're trying to figure out where did they, get it from? Did they actually have spies in there, or did they do it, electronically? And so, yeah, it probably frightened them a little bit, but I don't think it will deter them, because to be quite frank with you, Jamal, I think they knew that all along, that if Israel attacked Iran, they're going to respond. We've already seen that. As you've heard me say before, I'll say it again. I can give you facts, opinions, and assumptions. When we have a fact, they've already responded before. If it wasn't for the help of us and others, there would have been more damage in Israel. There was damage that, more damage than what was actually in the press and what they, announced. And so I don't think it will deter Israel in particular. I necessarily won't say Israel. Bibi Netanyahu, I don't think it will deter him. He's looking for this war. And guess what? He's looking for help from us. And so, no, I don't think it will deter them. But I tell you this, though, it probably put a little, thinking in there and a little bit of frightness in them in regards to Iran obtaining this information.
Will the U.S. help? Because Israel believes, regardless of, and I got to be honest, I've been very cynical about these negotiations. In my mind, the U.S. most likely either wanted to attack anyway, which is the reason why they put a negotiation where they knew was a red line from the very beginning. Either allowing Israel to attack and pretending as if we knew nothing about it, kind of like what Donald Trump is doing with the nuclear triad that Zelensky hit. And now he's like, I don't know anything about this. Meaning, I was very cynical about it. If you look at what took place with Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Sudan, all of these countries are basket cases. We overthrew all of these countries. Well, Sudan is a different animal, but we attacked all of these countries with the idea that Iran was going to be the last man standing. Iran is the last man standing. Donald Trump is surrounded by a bunch of lunatics, Zionists, and white chops. And so I would imagine that if Israel's point of view, this is our chance. We're going to go for everything in Gaza. We're going to go for as much as we can in the West Bank. And yes, we're going to try to take down Iran right now with an administration that is not the brightest in the world, that we may either be able to goad or get involved in a war on our behalf. And so you have this situation right now where Donald Trump asked for something that was a red line from the very beginning and didn't seem to accept that it was a red line. So I have to ask, okay, well, why are you asking for something that is already off the table unless you want to plan an attack? Now, even if I take this on its surface and say, okay, the administration actually does want a deal. Well, I'm still stuck with this idea that if Israel attacks, will the U.S. respond? And if the U.S. will respond, then what does it matter if you're negotiating? Give me your take on that. And I want to get the same question from you, Colonel Wilkerson. But Dennis, Commander Sergeant, what should I call you, by the way? Should I call you?
If you want to use a military term for him to make it easy, just say chief. You can say Dennis. I'm okay with Dennis. I'm a retired guy now. I can let it go. Or you can say chief if you want to use my military.
Okay, I'll go chief.
Okay. All right.
So do you think, will the U.S. get involved if indeed Israel attacks and Iran responds? Because they will respond.
Hey, let me digress to something that you said earlier when we talk about the mission that Ukraine did with the bombing of those aircraft, of those bombers.
Yep.
My personal opinion, there's a possibility that Trump didn't know. Now, why do I say that? I didn't say the administration. Trump didn't know. Now, why do I say that? Why do you say that, Dennis? Why do you say that, Chief? Well, when I was in the Pentagon, first time I ever seen it, Larry understand this, we were always apolitical. We worked with whatever administration. When I was in the Pentagon under the George Bush administration, George W. Bush, it was probably more, I've never seen anything so political. And I was surrounded by neocons, and I studied their playbook. And their playbook, if they have to keep things away from the commander-in-chief, information and what you're doing behind his back, they will do it. So you look at George Bush, who was probably, I wouldn't necessarily say immature, but he did not have a lot of foreign policy experience. If you look at Trump now, he's a so-called businessman, but not a lot of foreign policy. Yeah, he may have made a lot of, trips around the world doing business. Now, so he may not have known. Now, will we support Israel? Well, we've already done it already, okay? Now, will we actually go on the offensive for them? There's forces out there. There's neocons embedded. There's neocon sympathizers embedded in his administration that somehow either convince him by way of patting him on the back, hey, you could be the guy that they did with George Bush and say, hey, you made peace in the Middle East. It was done through war, though, but you made peace in the Middle East. So now, you mentioned my book earlier, which is over my shoulder. That is exactly why, one of the reasons I wrote the book in behalf of the men and women so they know why they went to Iraq, but to help prevent us and educate the public, Iraq, WMD, lie, we went to war. I'm trying to prevent us from going to war with Iran because of the fact, as you stated, that is the last piece. Iran, last country standing. So I'm trying to prevent that. Yes, there's a possibility that we could go on the offensive. And if we don't do everything we can to stop that, as my new slogan now, we went into Iraq based on a lie, WMD. Fool us once, shame on you. Iran, nuclear weapon, as Larry had so articulated about, they don't want the weapon, okay? Go to war in Iran based on a nuclear weapon that's not there, shame on us. And so, yes, there are forces, Jamal, that will try to force us into defending Iran, and I am afraid of that, and that is what I'm trying to prevent, because there are forces that will try to do everything we can to go to war on behalf of Israel. And once I will tell you, facts, opinions, and assumptions, well, we already know we went to war in Iraq on behalf of Israel, and I do know there are forces that want us to go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel.
Colonel Wilkerson, same question. Would Trump be stupid enough to do that? He attacked Yemen. We lost 3 airplanes. there was concern that we were going to knock an F-35 out the sky, or Yemen was going to knock an F-35 out the sky. Trump, after spending a huge amount of money, after killing a lot of people, most of which were civilians, but not being able to accomplish the objective of decimating the leadership of the country, eventually pulled out. So, all right, I'm done. Would that same country with a low threshold for pain in the way that Trump seemed to express in Yemen be willing to accept a much higher threshold for pain in regards to Iran?
Probably not. Let me expand on something that Dennis said, though, which I think is a very important point.
Please.
I think it applies to Ukraine, too, and maybe even elsewhere, even the Los Angeles riots right now, for example. This administration doesn't know what it's doing. Plain and simply, it doesn't know what it's doing. It's blundering through foreign policy, security policy, and domestic policy. It's blundering on behalf of, Trump thinks, promises he made during the campaign and promises he's made after being president. But nonetheless, it's bumbling. And so that's the first thing you have to think about is, does Donald Trump even know this is going on? Did he direct this? Does he have knowledge of what's happening beneath him in a number of places where, as Dennis insinuated, indeed, as he said and as he wrote about, is a new custom in our government? People who don't pay any attention to the president or use his inexperience or laxity to operate on their own. Read especially the CIA, MI6, and Mossad, who are deeply embedded in the Ukraine imbroglio, and I think did things that Donald Trump didn't even know about. Now, how does that apply to Iran? Well, look what Witkoff, the special envoy, the only one who really seemed to have Trump's ear and could occasionally get to see him, unlike Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, he started out with a very, very capable plan. And he rushed that plan into action in Oman in 2 different meetings, and it looked like we were going to make progress with Iran on the new nuclear talks. Then all of a sudden, the neocons got involved. Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, got fired over this because he got so involved in it. He was running panic, oh my God, we might make a deal. I've got to stop this. So Trump got rid of him because he detected it. Now, there's still lots of people like that. He fired 4 more people on the national security staff recently who were doing this sort of thing. There's a whole slew more than that. So there are people throughout the administration that will do things underneath Witkoff and Trump's visibility. But what Witkoff got done to him was reined in. He no longer could be a real negotiator. He had these red lines that were driven home with him. And most of the people who drove them home were people like, guess who? Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, Josh Hawley, and a whole host of Republicans in the Congress. Lindsey Graham goes over to Ukraine and prophesies the attacks that are going to take place on Ukraine, and probably knew more about it than Donald Trump did. So we've got a mess. We've got a dangerous, awful mess in national security decision-making, foreign policy decision-making. And I thought you were going to go right away with Los Angeles because that's showing the mess too.
I guess my issue, both of you were in the blob, so fair enough, and all due respect in this sense. I am very skeptical that Trump didn't know. I mean, that is a hell of a risk for Zelensky and Europe to take. Europe is terrified that Donald Trump walks. Zelensky is terrified that Donald Trump walks. Zelensky went to negotiations not because he wanted to, but because he was forced to do so. When Donald Trump on Truth Social, I think it's a good idea that you go. He immediately went. He complained all the way. He danced for the camera, but he went because what he was concerned about is Donald Trump saying, all right, I'm done. I'm walking. In which case, Europe can't carry the war by itself. And Lord knows, Ukraine will collapse. Hell, they'll collapse with the U.S. help, but they'll collapse fast without the U.S. help. And so it's like they would have to take a risk that Donald Trump would stay when really the only threat, or it's only a threat to Ukraine for Donald Trump to walk. And yet you get the situation where they have infinite confidence. They go out and attack the nuclear triad. They go out, blow up a civilian train, like literally just murder civilians. And even go after the Crimean Bridge. Now, of all those things, I suspect the nuclear triad is an issue, even though Russia's not going to bring it up because they're just going to say it's a military target. killing the civilians is what they're going to linger on, because that they can lean into and point out, this is outrageous. You just murder people for the sake of murdering them. The point I'm trying to make, though, is the belief that Donald Trump didn't know, and compared with the infinite confidence that Zelensky and Europe had in doing it, seems a bit far-fetched to me. Why didn't he walk?
Jamal, let me just share something with you. It
Please.
may be hard to believe. Like I said, I studied the neocon playbook. I was surrounded by them in the Pentagon. Okay, it was filled with neocons. Okay, first time I ever seen anything. I spent half my military life in the Pentagon. First time I ever seen anything like that. And part of their playbook, something I want you to keep in mind: Trump has been on this march for peace in Ukraine, in Russia. You know, hey, I can stop it in 24 hours, whatever the case may be. I do feel, once again, assumption, opinion, that he really wants to do that. There are some that say, hey, you know, he's always, I'm gonna use the term, you know, just down to earth, you know, sucking up to Putin. Okay. Do you think if he's sucking up to Putin, he wants that peace, that he will allow something like that to happen? Think about that for a moment. I always tell people to use critical thinking. This is a guy that's wanting to have peace. Now, with that said, I'm telling you, those folks are undermining him. He has people that he's surrounded by that are undermining him. Those forces are stronger than what you can imagine. Okay, so there is a great possibility. I don't know. I'm based on assumption because I'm not there. But I can tell you from my experience and watching them in action and what they listen. Larry and I used to have conversations. Those neocons were doing things behind Colin Powell's back, okay, to get to President Bush. Cheney and Rumsfeld were working together behind the State Department in urging Bush to do certain things. Likewise, based on that experience that I saw myself, I would not be surprised if there are forces that are undermining Trump's plan. I really do believe that. So, yeah, it may be seem that he knew. No, I feel pretty confident. I don't know, but I feel pretty confident there's a lot of things that's going on behind him, undermining him, that he's not aware of.
The reason why I say I also would, and that I emphatically said yes, would he allow it? Yes, I really think he would allow it. Donald Trump has put out a peace plan that is dead on arrival. It was dead as a doornail before Donald Trump ever uttered it. The idea that Russia is going to allow U.S. troops on Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, something that it considers to be Russian territory, is absurd.
Wait a minute, say that again, say that again.
The idea that Donald Trump is going to allow U.S. troops on Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, which was part of his plan, that the U.S. would have troops in Zaporozhye operating the newest power plant, or that European troops under the guise of whatever they want to call themselves in Ukraine. All of these things were red lines. None of these things were acceptable. The idea that
I never said Trump was smart and he made sense. Okay. I never said that. But
just to make the argument, I'm just pointing out that if that same guy wants Putin to accept a plan that Putin would never accept, and he decides to have a shadow war under the actual war that he's running in order to put pressure on the Russian government to say, hey, your railroads are blowing up. Hey, your triad just got hit. Hey, we're still hitting Crimean Bridge. All of this can stop if we just agree to a deal. And of course, under this model, Donald Trump has to keep his hands off of it. So he's like, I didn't know anything about it. Because it's even, believe it or not, it's even,
you're talking think tank type thing. I don't think he's operationally that smart to be thinking like that. Okay. I mean, yeah, I think only thing he has in his mind is plain stuff. You know, hey, yeah, I don't think he has. Well, I just no kick against him. There's a lot of people that don't have. That's why you have think tanks. You know, that's why you have so much. I don't think he's thinking that deep. There's nothing I feel confident about. I don't think he's thinking that deep. Okay. He has one thing in mind. Hey, I'm going to have peace within 24 hours. Duh. You think that's going to happen? That was part of his plan. What I'm telling you, because he doesn't have that deep thinking, there are people undermining him. Yeah, I don't know this, but I do feel in his heart. If he thought he could have peace, I think he would go for it. Why? Well, Obama, look at the major award he got. He didn't never cause any peace. He's looking for self-gratification. If I can make peace, look what I have done. I'll get the Nobel Peace Prize. Look at you, Obama. Look what I got. I really had peace. So that's my point. Yeah, I think in his mind, not because of the fact it may be the right thing to do, it's because of the fact it makes him look good. Okay. Now I'm gonna go back to what I just said again. One, I don't think he's that deep to be thinking like that. I'm not that deep. That's why you have think tanks, you know. That's why Colin Powell had people like Larry Wilkerson surrounded with him, deep thinkers. Okay. Trump is not a deep thinker when it comes to operational matters like that.
Let me,
Colonel Wilkerson, give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on this. I could be wrong, of course. I don't think I am. I think Trump would take peace on his terms, on U.S. terms as a U.S. president. But give me your thoughts, Colonel Wilkerson.
Well, I just want to expand a little bit on what Dennis was saying there in this way. First of all, Trump is indispensable if there is to be a decent peace in Europe. He's indispensable. He doesn't realize that. He does not realize that. He does not realize how integral he is to that. Second, the only approach that expands, amplifies, and deepens that profound truth is a new relationship between Washington and Moscow, which includes new nuclear weapons treaties between the two powers.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. And that's Trump's trump card. To a certain extent, it's Putin's too. Ignore that little shit, pardon my language, in Kiev, and get on with the big thing and let him know you're doing that by stomping him with your track boots as you move towards Moscow. Put that as the premier thing you're going to do. Ukraine is an afterthought, one that's killing people, so you want to get it shut down. But you want to get it shut down from the perspective of we are the two most powerful men in the world, discounting Xi Jinping, if you will. So let's get this on the right track and let's do it. But Trump doesn't have the smarts to do that.
Can a U.S. president even do that?
You asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I think he could do that?
Yeah. I mean, because there, as you point out, there's a blob.
Not with this
There's
present
the
team. Not with this present team.
Right.
Not with Rubio. Rubio's a par excellence neoconservative. He could be right in tandem with Lindsey Graham if he liked him. They hate each other's guts, I'm told. But that just shows you what neocons are like. They often hate each other more than they hate the others of us. But he's got no help other than Witkoff. And Witkoff is inexperienced as heck too, really. I mean, he's a real estate salesman.
Larry, let me expound on what something you just said with what he has right now. And Jamal, this is what I'm trying to say. Listen, George Bush, the son, he was surrounded by those folks. Listen, I think we talked about this the last time I was on.
Yeah.
Cheney was leader of the transition team. He made himself the vice president. And then most of these folks came from the AEI. Look it up. AEI, all neocons. That's their base headquarters. And so George, other than Colin Powell, the rest of those folks were running over Bush. Likewise, Trump thinks he's smart. These folks are running over him.
Trump just switched to heritage.
Wow. Yeah. And look, that's probably why we have the LA riots right now. We'll get to that later. Yeah.
Yeah, we can get to the riots. Okay.
Let me say this. One last thing, Jamal, to help your audience and even you to get a better picture of this. I mean, this mess that we're in Ukraine, we caused it, along with the Brits. If you go back, I think I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. We did the Eisenhower Media Network did a New York Times paid ad back in May of 2023. And we break down this history of how we got here to this war. You think about Boris Johnson, I think we talked about it before. He went over to Ukraine when there was a peace deal in place to say, hey, don't do that. We got your back. And as Larry said, all we're doing is using a proxy war, first of all, and using Ukraine people and their infrastructure and killing them just so we can weaken Russia. And then when Larry mentioned Lindsey Graham a few minutes ago, just a diehard neocon bought and paid for by the forces, he was telling, listen, we have a doggone, I think 18-year-old where folks have to register for the draft, where Ukraine's was 25. Lindsey was complaining because they were losing. Hey, you need to take that up, bring it down to 18 so you can get more people killed. We're providing you all this information, but hey, yeah, your folks are dying. More need to die. So we started this stuff. As Larry said, we need to get Zelensky out of that way and let the two world power. So don't forget about China now, because they'll get upset at us because they're powerful too, and we forget that sometimes. But we need to let those two get together and see if they can make peace, because peace was in the making already. But we sent Boris Johnson over there to hey, Zelensky, don't worry about it. Go to war. We got your back.
Yeah,
we started this mess. Yeah,
it's disgusting. I want to hit Europe for a bit before we get to the riots, because I do want to get your take on the riots. Europe has been losing it recently, and they have effectively gone on this notion of we need to kill any deal that Donald Trump comes up with. So there's that. So every random blue moon, you get these people with no hard power that can't do anything, can't even put up a 30, 50,000 person military on the ground if they needed to, screaming that they're going to put troops in Ukraine, something that they know is going to kill any sort of deal or any negotiation that's going to take place. So you get that. Then you get them effectively feeding Ukrainians to the Russians with the idea, almost like a military campaign where you're sacrificing one or two in order to save the entire team. Ukraine is that guy. So it's like, okay, well, we're going to feed you to the Russians so we ourselves can build up our industry, build up our military, get ourselves in political alignment for us to fight the Russians later. I guess my thing is this even reasonable? Like, does Europe even have the capability in 5 or 10 years and organizing themselves to try to have a war with the Russians, which seems insane to me, but it seems that that's what they seem to be organizing themselves politically for. Colonel Wilkerson, I'm going to start with you. Give me a take on this.
Well, I think there's a real flaw in that plan, if that is indeed the plan, and I think you've described it rather well. And that flaw is that the majority of people in these countries, well, almost no exception, except maybe for a couple of the Nordic countries, don't support it. They don't support it in Germany. Old Merz is following now, is dropping below 30% even. They don't support it in France, where Macron, as I've said often, is a dead man walking. And they don't support it in London, where Starmer is a dead man in his grave. He just doesn't know it yet. So this is not a plan that's going to adhere, because the people of Europe will not support it. Merz is already walking back a lot of his rhetoric about joining the fray in Ukraine, as it were, because he's understanding that. He's seeing the poll numbers, and he realizes his coalition is going to have a hard time staying together, even in Germany's convoluted political system. So that's the first point. The people in Europe are not behind this. Second, and this is augmenting that first point, when we took out Nord Stream 2, we caused the German economy and repercussions throughout Europe, especially around Germany, to almost collapse. They know that now. They are understanding that the expensive energy that was substituted from the United States is costing them not only a fortune in taxes, but also it's costing them their economy. So that's causing a real problem. And the people are very noteworthy for their social programs, right? They have the best social programs in the world, many would say. Well, if they're going to do this 5% of GDP, or even 4% of GDP, hell, even 3% of GDP, they're going to have to take these social programs down major pegs. The people aren't going to support that. So these people are operating in a chimera, a nightmare, a dream, whatever you want to call it. There's no way they're going to take Europe into a posture to fight Russia. Putin knows that. And I'm just amazed, and frankly, will continue to be amazed, Clausewitz's theories notwithstanding, the dynamics of war changing things, for example, that Putin's not more aggressive than he is, because the opportunities are manifest out there to do things like trim NATO's sails considerably, but he's not doing it. And people say, well, he doesn't have the industrial base, he doesn't have the military. Hogwash. He's got the most powerful, battle-hardened military in the world right now, and he's got an industrial base to support it.
Well, then, get into that. Why don't you do it then?
Mr. Putin, stay prudent and stay circumspect.
Well, that's what he's being, and that's annoying to a lot of people, including myself, because I want this war to be over with. But Colonel, real quick, why don't you think he's being more aggressive? When Mark made the point of saying he's concerned about starting a larger basically a larger war with NATO, something that he's trying to skate a line and effectively walking. What is your take on that? That is not entirely a concern, that he should be more aggressive in pushing it?
Yeah, you've hit on an important point that we miss often. We're trying to exploit it in places like Georgia, but nonetheless, Putin's got other concerns. He's got other deep concerns. He's got some, and these are somewhat non-strategic. They have a strategic tone and intent, but they're visceral, passionate concerns that a Russian, especially a Russian Orthodox, would have. He doesn't like the fact that his whole southern rim is peopled by a religion and a group that is antagonistic, if you will, not only to the Church of Russia, but also, and he listens to the head of the Church of Russia, but also to his idea of what Russia's strategic interests are. You know, they once owned these places. Literally, they own these places. They don't anymore. And they're becoming vibrant and rich. And the power, as I've said before, is shifting across them, all the way from Uzbekistan to Tajikistan, all across Central Asia. The power is shifting. If you've been to any of those capitals, Dushanbe, Tashkent, Samarkand, it's a different world there. They're putting up the big hotels Donald Trump should visit. They're putting up all the riches and the signs of capitalism working and so forth. This is the power moving away from the West back to the East. And it's moving underneath Russia's soft underbelly. And so he's watching this with some tentativeness. And one of the reasons he's moved closer to Beijing is because he sees Beijing as being the magnet for all this movement of power. And it's every aspect of power. It's cultural, it's military, it's financial, it's economic, it's intelligence. It's all moving away from the West. That's what's driving Washington crazy. It doesn't know how to stop this. So he's got some concerns other than Ukraine and other than NATO. And I'd say probably NATO is the least of his concerns in terms of military power.
Interesting. Please, Chief.
Yeah, a couple quick comments. Something that you said earlier when I was trying to convince you about all these forces Trump. Then you said something interesting about, Europe and them wanting to push this war, maybe using, once again, Ukraine as pawns, probably for their protection, whatever the case may be. Think about what you just said. Now, I said the forces within the United States of America, then you said Europe. Now, these forces, and let me just mention one other force, the MIC, the military industrial complex, they operate internationally. They're one of the ones, when I mentioned about this ad, New York Times paid ad, we talk about the MIC, how they really, think about this for a moment. Mm-hmm. There's no longer a Soviet Union. There's no longer a Warsaw Pact. But yet, we still maintain NATO. And not only that, we expanded NATO.
Yes, we do.
Do you not think that Russia has security interests as well and have been warning us all along? Okay, buddy, Ukraine is going to be the red line up against our border. You think they're going to allow that? And then Larry mentioned something about prudency, being prudent. You want this war to end. Well, Ukrainians should want the war to end. Europe should want the war to end. All of us should want the war to end. But Putin sees it. He has to continue this war, and he's doing it prudently. Unfortunately, he's sacrificing a lot of lives, but he can win by attrition. Now, another thing I want to say as well, I want you to look at Gaza right now and what the Israelis are doing to Gaza. Don't let me no doubt in your mind, if Putin so desired, he could destroy Ukraine real easily. But does he want that responsibility? Then he owns it. As Powell told the Bush administration, you break it, you own it. He owns it then. Have you heard anything about Russia always talk? They wanted to join NATO. They wanted to join. It's a fact. We said no. Why? We want to control the world. The neocons and our imperialistic philosophy. We want to control the world. We all want the war to stop. I want it to stop. You know why? Because Ukrainians are dying on behalf of our country. Their infrastructure being destroyed because of our country. and those forces that we talked about. I want this war to stop. I'm no fan of doggone Donald Trump. I hate his personality. I hate certain things he say and do. But as I tell anybody, if you're trying to do something right, I can be a part of that, regardless of how I feel about you. And the last thing I will say, I get so sick and tired of, now I'm getting mad. I'm trying to control my emotion. I wish I was cool like Larry. Now I'm getting mad. I get so doggone mad when people say, oh, we shouldn't talk to our enemies. What the world am I going to talk to my friends? I don't have no problem with my friends. I got problems with my enemies. I want to resolve issues. So I'm going to talk to anybody that can help me resolve that issue, including if it's an enemy.
From your mouth to God's ears, yes. Everything that you just said, I agree with. Let's get to the riots. And while I have you up, give me your take on this. I mean, there are a lot of people who come away with the assessment that this is not, let's say, normal. Like, this is not just random. That you have, let's say, elements that want to almost color revolution-esque in the way that it's working. I don't know if I tire about that, but I'm open to hearing the argument for it. Give me your take on this, Chief, first, and then I'm going to go to Colonel Wilkerson. How do you see something underneath these riots in LA? I mean, to give you, just to give a perspective on this, there's a guy, I got rid of the thing. There's a guy who's standing on a Waymo vehicle in flames, waving a Mexican flag. And my first guess was like, where the hell did he get that flag?
Writing. I wrote Mexican flag. I'm going to tell you about that in a bit. I don't know if you can see that. I wrote Mexican flag.
It's the weirdest thing in the world. Like, these flags are massive. And she was like, where the hell did he get this Mexican flag? That right. Okay, it's not that one. I'll find it. But it is a bizarre clip, and they're waving these things all over the place. And you have to ask yourself, okay, this is a bit weird.
Let's be easy now. I like the Mexican flag. I think it's kind of sexy.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just
I spent a lot of time over there too. But however, let me just say,
right here. Here's the clip.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Jamal, but let me just say this. Let's get to the root of a couple things here first. One, go ahead.
No, please. No, please continue. I'm just showing the clip.
Okay. What I want to say, I'm going to get to that in a moment. First of all, listen, we have people over here. We have the dreamers. We have young that came over here as kids. You know, we have people that come over here, okay, illegally, or whatever the case may be. What I'm bothered by is the traumatizing of these kids. You know, I heard something there was school graduations where you had ICE out there waiting, flying helicopters over the school graduation, and the families had to leave out, and the kids were scared. I hate that. You know, I think our Congress need to come together and come up with some type of program where we allow dreamers to be able to say, this is all they know. Give them a pathway to citizenship. Stop talking about it. It's almost like a two-state solution. We keep talking about it. Do it. Well, pathway to citizenship. Do it and stop talking about it, because that's all they know. You know, it started out, okay, we're going to get rid of criminals. Okay, I agree with that. I don't care what you feel about it. I agree with that. If you got criminals over here that are doing harm to us and so forth, well, you got to go. Now, peaceful citizens that have come over here, especially the dreamers, they're participants and participating in our country and our economy. We got to find a pathway to citizenship. Now, before I get to the flag, well, let me just say this. I'll go to the flag now. I think, my personal opinion, that's a disgrace. You're talking about you wanting to stay here and be a part of the United States of America, and then you're flying a Mexican flag? I don't get that. I mean, what are you trying to do? Now, that's where you get the Trumpies and the MAGAs going nuts, and that takes away from trying to get a true legal immigration plan. You got folks waving Mexican flags. What is that about? Wave a United States flag and say, I'm happy to be here. I want to stay here. Now, let's get to the other thing, the big elephant in the room that Larry and I, have experienced in. Bringing in the God-dogged Marines.
Yes.
Come on, give me a break. And for all you First Amendment rights and you gun conservatives and talking about, their main reason for having guns is to prevent the government from doing what they're doing right now. They're taking over a state, whether you like it or not. The governor did not come in and say, hey, let's bring in the National Guard. The Trumpies trying to prove a point because they can't get rid of all the so-called criminals. Now they're going to the peaceful people to get their numbers. And so now we're going to bring in the Marines and look all strong. That is low down, dirty politics right there. You shouldn't play politics with the Marines, our forces that they're to fight and defend our country, not to go against and put Marines out there to fight in the United States of America against Americans, because there are people that with legitimate papers and citizens out there protesting too, the peaceful protesters. What are they protesting about? The traumatizing of these young kids, these young dreamers that I may go home and my parents are not there. Okay. So now this Mexican flag, you need to be waving American flags that, hey, I'm over here. I want to be a part of this community. Okay. If you're going to raise a Mexican flag, then you go back over to Mexico and raise that flag. Now, that's my opinion there.
It's just the only reason I bring up the Mexican flag is just a bit conspicuous. Like this clip is going to be the thing that solidifies Donald Trump's polling on this issue.
That's my point. Exactly.
Let me offer 3 points here, because I think they're very important. First of all, the LAPD police chief has been a really stalwart character in all of this. Mm-hmm. Unlike in 1992, my experience with the Watts riots, when H.W. Bush had to put troops in Los Angeles. He said this morning, and I think he's right, there are two elements out there. One of them is large, and it's peaceful protesters doing what the Constitution allows them to do. Right. They haven't caused me much problem at all. They sometimes get in the way. The logistics of it is more difficult, but they are doing what they're authorized under our system to do, protesting, legitimate protest. Then there's an element underneath them, and they usually come out at night. They burn cars, they paint vehicles, they throw smoke bombs, they burn buildings. This is a very different group. And you could say this is the group Trump is after, but he's doing a very imperfect job of isolating them and getting them. And the police would probably do a better job than either the National Guard or the Marines. Third, or second, whatever point I'm at.
Third, you're good. Third.
When H.W. Bush handled this in 1992, he was going to do something that was roughly equivalent to what Trump is doing now, including the Marines. Colin Powell went hustling over to the White House with Dick Cheney's approval. And because Dick Cheney knew Colin Powell knew more about Black Americans than he did. And he got H.W. Bush, and they had a long session, and H.W. Bush changed the execute order. He changed the rules of engagement and everything, because what Dennis just said is right. You don't send your bloodiest, most lethal killers into a domestic situation with live ammunition. Yes. You just don't do that. Here's the next point, which is really the one I'm frightened of. This is prep for the eventual takeover.
Expand upon that, please.
I don't think I need to. I think Donald Trump is not going to leave office. And I think those people Dennis and I have been talking about who are around him in vast numbers and influence are not going to want to leave office either. And so we're looking at a situation that is unknown to us. We're looking at a president who is not going to leave.
Hey, Jamal, all you have to do, and I always tell folks to do critical thinking. Look at the FBI. You look at the Justice Department. You look at Homeland Security. You look at those three law enforcement agents, and they are loyalists, not to the country, but to Donald Trump. The FBI, the Justice Department, Homeland Security, all loyalists to Donald Trump. As Larry has said before, in previous administrations, you had people to hold a president back or whatever, to give true guidance, true counseling. These are true loyalists to Donald Trump, who wants to be a king. Critical thinking on your part.
Yeah, Supreme Court has allowed him to be a king also, haven't they? Yeah. So this is an American dictatorship, effectively in the making with Donald. Let me ask you this. Under that model, are these protests even legit? Like, meaning, is there something under these protests that is a subversive element that is effectively, oh God, the January 6th thing, I can't think of the guy's name, where he says, I'm going to be dead or in jail tomorrow, but I'm going into the Capitol. And then he went home and he let everybody else go into the Capitol. And when he went to the feds were like, yeah, we talked to him. He seemed okay guy. And it's like, okay, you're putting grandmas in jail, but that guy, for whatever particular reason, he's okay, even though he's on video screaming about going into the Capitol, and was directly related and responsible for moving the barricades in some respects to let people go into the Capitol. Meaning, a lot of people have thought that you have instigators who are directly involved, and that many of those people are from the FBI. Hell, this FBI agent, when you throw a rock, I mean, the people didn't even realize that they were there when Bobby Kennedy got killed, and come to find out, there he was. Like, meaning, all throughout our history, and even on January 6th, you had agents who were just rummaging around in the crowds. They didn't want to acknowledge what they were doing. They didn't want to acknowledge how many were in the Capitol. They didn't want to acknowledge any of this stuff. And I'm saying, we know that there are people who instigate this stuff and would do so for political whims. And on an issue like immigration, oh, it is a hot button. You only need, as you point out, I could show you videos of them looting stores, burning cars. The guy with the huge Mexican flag, okay, where did he get the Mexican flag from on a whim? The people who are handing out black masks and stuff like that, just coming out with boxes of them saying, here you are. That is a bit weird. I'm not saying it is impossible. I'm just saying it is a bit weird. And if indeed you're trying to come up with your, burning down the Reichstag, this and stuff like this would be incentive in order to, hey, we were going to put Marines on the streets.
Jamal, the true peaceful folks shouldn't allow that. They should, we should say, like I just came out so strongly about the Mexican flag. The true peace lovers that are trying to do the right thing, they should condone that. As I just articulated, hey, listen, we don't condone them flying. There could be an instigator. As I told you before, I give you opinions, assumptions, and facts. I don't know that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yes. The political world is not fair. People don't play fair. So you can have plants in there. Yeah, doing those. But those true, peaceful, loving people should not condone that, and they should speak out against that, and say, hey, go ahead, Larry.
I was just going to say the problem is, as this woman was saying this morning, who was quite articulate along with the police chief, she's a leader of some of the peaceful protests. She said they have guns, they have knives, and they will use them. We don't. We refuse to use violence. We have a professional underclass in this country that does this sort of thing, that makes money off doing this sort of thing, that is right at every protest virtually. And when they see it's really going well, they go full bore, and they savage buildings, they steal things. Yeah. I mean, it's a professional underclass. Now, what Trump's going to do, I think, but not Trump, he's not smart enough, but the people around him who are, they're going to watch, isolate, and pick these people. They'll have photographs of them, bios on them, and everything else. And when the time comes for the initial takeover, they'll be in the front lines of the takeover. They will use them, just as Hitler did. Hitler used some of the trash of Germany as the cutting edge of Kristallnacht, for example, trashing the Jewish synagogues and so forth. Then he got rid of them. Some of them he just killed.
Many of them he just killed. Yeah,
that's what they're going to do. I think this is not your January 6th group. That didn't fail because the system held. That failed because they were incompetent. They will not be incompetent this time around.
Well, hey, let me give another analogy. I talked about with this Mexican flag when I was saying, those that don't go on and trying to do the right thing. It makes me, hark back, and Larry, remember this. I remember when we first took over Baghdad, and we had some troops, that got so excited they're going to run and raise an American flag, there. And I remember my former boss, the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, got on the phone, take that flag down right now, And likewise, we should have had people saying, hey, take that flag. We're here, to support. Hey, we love America. We want to be here. So I just wanted to give that analogy. Sometimes you get folks excited. We had troops that wanted to raise the American flag as though, hey, we done took over this country. No, we so-called came to liberate it, but yet we're going to put an American flag on there. So we took that flag down immediately. Likewise, somebody should have been telling if they are plants or whatever the case may be, or if it wasn't a plant, it was just an innocent person, why the Mexican flag? I still ain't figured that one out. So smarter people should have said, hey, guy, if you're not a plant, hey, take that down. That's not helping our cause. If you are a plant, then maybe that's when you should get violent and, hey, you're not going to do this. I'm being funny now. I'm being sarcastic.
Listen, either way, bad idea.
You set me up for this comment, Dennis. You set me up for it.
Okay.
The military took that flag down, but we damn sure tried to take over Iraq.
Well, touchdown. I accept that, Larry. You're exactly right. I accept that. And look, and once again, Jamal, sometimes Trump said loud things out loud, too. And in Trump's case, he said we should have kept the oil, too.
Yes, he did. Yeah. Yes, he did. And when he went to Syria, he kept the oil this time around. Guys, this has been a lively conversation, and I really appreciate both of you joining me for this. I honestly do. Just to give the bio, Dennis Fritz, he's retired Commander-Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force. He is currently Director of the Eisenhower Media Network, EMN, with the mission to promote peace and diplomacy over war. While on active duty, he served as the Principal Senior Advisor to 4-star commanders in the Pacific Air Command and Air Force Space Command. He also held the additional duty of the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Commander of North America Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, and author of the book Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. And of course, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. He is the former distinguished visiting professor of the government and public policy at the College of William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. He also taught for 6 years at the University Honors Program at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He is also, and probably best known as retired United States Colonel and former Chief of Staff for United States Secretary of State Colin Powell. Gentlemen,
hey,
thank
Jamal,
you for this.
Before we close,
Yes.
Can I make one comment? And
of course.
One correction, because I want to give this person due justice. I stepped down as the director of the Eisenhower Media Network effective June the 1st. However, I'm still a main senior fellow there, and a Major General Dennis Leitch has taken over effective June the 1st. And part of that reason, we want to make sure we put pressure on all these flag officers and general officers out there that we wish to speak up. And General Leitch is going to put the pressure on those general officers to come out and speak up about what's happening in our country, both here in Washington, D.C. and expanding into L.A. now, and then also internationally. And so, but I'm still a senior fellow at the Eisenhower Media Network, along with my colleagues there. And I just wanted to make that correction for your audience.
No, thank you for that. And honestly, both of you, fantastic conversation. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. You be safe. Have a good one, guys.
Likewise. Thanks for having us.
All right. That was a great conversation. I enjoyed that. And the audience the chat has been on fire today. The chat has been on fire. Kim got you guys riled up. That's what it is. Kim got you guys riled up. All right, let's go into the last few comments before we're going to call it a night, because I want to cut these videos because I have to get up early tomorrow, and me getting up early tomorrow does not work well here. Then I think this is Danny Heil. Great guest, Jamal. Colonel Wilkerson, he is a fantastic guest. Both of them are. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it. And we have Laugh 66. Rick Sanchez is shallow and it's sincere, and RT's Margarita Simeon is wrong to platform him. She would also do better to hire Jamal Thomas. I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. I like Rick Sanchez. Rick Sanchez has had me on the show a few times. He is an old-fashioned newsman. I don't know what hell else to call it. He's an old-fashioned newsman. It's like when you meet Rick, he's an old-fashioned news guy. I don't know how else to describe it. And he's good at his job. I don't know why you shitting on that guy. I like Rick. Rick has had me on the show a few times. He's been on my show a few times. So if she's, hired Jamal Thomas, I think it's illegal to hire Americans at this point. You would have to move to Moscow, which is what Rick did. I don't have an interest to move into Moscow. I would love to visit. Absolutely. I would love to have vodka, or for that matter, coffee, a cappuccino with Mark Sloboda and Arno. But living there might be a bit aggressive for long term. But I appreciate your point. I do appreciate your point. And I agree with you. She would be great to hire me too, if it was legal. Kevin Wayne, she is gorgeous, by the way. I haven't had a chance. I saw her. She does great work, and she is aggressive, pushing her point of view on Twitter. I haven't seen her do a live thing. I've only seen her do what? I'm saying that weird. I've only seen her do live once or twice, but that was when she was answering questions on behalf of the Russian government. I don't know if that is her. Is that her boss? She's Rick's boss. Is that how it works? I don't know if that's. Is that right? That's her boss. Maybe. Kevin Wayne. Context. I need to stop saying she's gorgeous. Just in general, when I'm talking about females. I'm a guy. I'm sorry. Kevin Wayne. Context. Sean Tex. She hates GP. She's far right. Okay. Okay. But again, why? Like, Kevin, the point I'm trying to make to you is if I don't know why she said it, then how could I have an opinion on what she is saying? What if she actually says something that I didn't think about when I say, hey, that's a good point? That's all I'm getting at. That's all I'm getting at. But okay, fair enough. I appreciate your point of view. Fair enough. The well-dressed nerd, art by Brave. Hot damn. JT Kim doesn't think the United States are the good guys. She's making an objective point, and you just don't agree with her. I never said that. What are you talking about? I never said that. One of the audience members put that in a tweet. As I pointed out, for all my point of view is, I don't know what she thinks in this sense. I come away with the assessment that the audience just disagrees. And I even made the argument that the audience just disagrees. That is not the same thing as her being one way or the other, being left or right, or for that matter, being somewhere between. Yeah, Brave. I don't know if you came in on a tail end of this conversation, but that was not my point of view. My point of view was defending her as a fantastic guest the entire way through. And even from this argument of, doesn't think that the U.S. is a good guy. I even made that point of saying, I don't know if she thinks the U.S. is a good guy. The fact that she come away with an assessment that the U.S. is supporting a genocide, that she's, the U.S. is provoking the war in Ukraine. Okay, that kind of tells me that is not her having a reflexive point of view. That is her having a point of view. And that the members in the audience who are like, she's to the right. Again, I don't even get that point that she's to the right. You guys just tend to be on the left, and she's coming at this from the standpoint of an independent that has points of view that span across the board, like most Americans. And because of your political disposition, you're coming waiting at her with a particular point of view. No, love Kim. She's fantastic. Love her to death. Yeah, Brave. You're talking out your ass on this one, Brave. You're coming out tail end on this. I gave her a full-throated defense. I love her to death. Kevin Wayne, go right ahead. She said it on Sabby's show. Okay, I've hit these before. Kevin Wayne and Kim said she hates the Green Party on Sabby. Again, I need context. I don't know the context. RT is taking Trump's side on LA. That is unfortunate. Yes, that is unfortunate. And again, I told you why I thought that. If you're dealing with Russia, I think you're dealing with this notion of the Russians that I've spoken to, or people who grew up in the Soviet Union. They would say, the shit you pulled in America, that wouldn't fly in the Soviet Union. And there's a different political culture that if they said do X, you do X. Just kind of the way it was. And so seeing people burn shit down, seeing people, that is just well beyond the pale. So there's that angle. The other angle is they may be simping for Trump, which I haven't, which I haven't necessarily put off the table. Kim believes in child gender reassignment. That I don't know is true. I've never heard her say that. So I don't know if that's true. Panama is more than paid enough for the canal. It belongs to Panama, not the U.S. Agreed. And the point is paid in blood. Kevin Wayne, get Jerry's take on China on your show. British expat who lives there. Kim is so far right. She even thinks that the Green Party is evil. Dude, look. Just because somebody disagrees doesn't mean they're far right. I used this example before. I use this example again because I think the example works. On most issues, in a political sense, you would probably find me trending left, especially, we should have control of our ports. We should have control of our energy grid, electricity grid, et cetera. All these things should be under the context of state. This should not be a private enterprise thing. If you ask me whether or not women or men should play in women's sports, I'm going to say you're out of your mind. Out of your mind. No. They should not be able to occupy women's spaces. Full stop. Zero issue saying so. And you would get some rando Democrat saying, oh my God, he's transphobic. Okay. Democrats to this day call Joe Rogan a right winger. There are people who have literally voted for Bernie Sanders and they would say, those people are right wingers. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're just not liberals. I'm saying the same thing is true for Kim. You disagree with the take that she has. That is different than you trying to define her political space based upon your own relative distance on the political scale. She's an independent. She just is. And in the same way that you're going to have some liberals saying Jamal Thomas is transphobic. Okay, whatever, man. Or if I'm like, the people are arguing that math is racist. It's like, get the fuck out of here. Math is not racist. Like, there are people who would say shit like that just because they disagree with the take that somebody has. Disagreeing with one or two things is not a definition of what that person is. So Kim is fucking fantastic. Her and I would fight over COVID. Her and I would have these arguments. Every time we talk, we argue. I love her to death. Could say it without the sheer, without any issue of difficulty in saying so. We would probably agree on most, but at the point where we get granular, we start to disagreeing, and we tend to hit that granular part. I'm saying that doesn't change who she is. She's a political independent. She has certain views and points of view that are going to trend to the left. She has certain points of view that are going to trend to the right. She's like most people. And so whereas many people in this channel tend to function further on the left, and you look at her and you're like, hey, she has this point of view that I think trends to the right. Yes, she may have a point of view that trends in a particular direction, but she has a point of view that is somewhat over the map. Some of that stuff may be cultural. Some of that stuff may just be she has a point of view about a particular issue. I guess I don't accept the premise. That's all. And again, I don't know the context. I know I keep saying this. I don't know the context of the Green Party thing. Without knowing the context, I can't really comment. My issue with Kim is she thinks the U.S. are the good guys. Again, I don't know that. You can't be the good guys if you're built slavery and genocide. Again, I don't know that. I've never... Look, if she is on the show and she is literally arguing that the U.S. is effectively backing a genocide, which it is, then how are you hitting her on this idea that she thinks the U.S. is the good guys? If she comes away with an assessment that China, that the U.S. should take the Panama Canal, or that immigrants should stay where they are, saying immigrants should stay where they are is not in any way saying whether the U.S. is a good guy or a bad guy. It's just from my own point of view, meaning hers, I think people should stay where they are. Okay, that's a point of view. I don't know how that's a designation of the U.S. being good or bad. That's my point. Yeah, she hit a hornet's nest. She hit a hornet's nest. It is funny to me because she was like, people jumped on me on my show. And I was like, nobody's jumping on you on this. What's the issue? I said whatever the fuck I want. Feel free. My audience can say whatever. Meaning you could say as my guest, whatever you want. She hit a hornet's nest. Look, people will have different takes. I've said that about Mike Maloof. I've said that about who else that some people take issue with, where I would point out this is not an echo chamber. The people will have different points of view. I don't have to agree with those points of view. We can mix it up in regards to whatever that particular point of view is, if I disagree or otherwise. She's no different. Maloof is no different. Rando person that will come on that'll have a conversation is no different. I know it is, Jeff Rich. Because somebody was like, I think Jeff Rich is a liberal. Dude, do you agree with the guy or not? I don't give a shit about the guy being a liberal. I don't know what the guy is politically. Do you agree with him or not? And if he's saying something that you disagree with, is it the end all be all? My COVID position, all of you, most of you disagree with me on COVID. Do you think I care? I don't care when I held it. I mean, it's people will have points of view that you disagree with. It is called life. It is life. It's just life. This notion of living in this brass chamber where, everybody agrees with me. That is not our world. That is not most people. Most people are going to have points of view that span the political spectrum. This guy believes in this. Like, it is political parties. They have this kind of weirdo thing of, we have a basket of policies that we agree with, and they run down the line. And you must agree with all these things, or somehow you are a heretic. Okay, fair enough. In a political party, fair enough. I'm not in a political party. I give you my honest take, one way or the other. I don't need you to agree with me. You disagreeing with me doesn't change my point of view on one iota. It just doesn't. And Kim has made a career of being a very strong independent and giving her point of view wherever that point of view falls, because it's her point of view. She's being consistent and honest to her own self, which is what you watch her for, right? I mean, it's like, what is your take? This is my take. Oh, fuck you, you have that take. It's like, okay, dude, then why are you asking me for my take, right? She's giving you an honest take. You can disagree with her take, and you can have reasons for disagreeing with her take, but it's an honest take. That's why I like her, frankly. I think she's fucking fantastic. Love her to death. And I would have her on tomorrow if she came on tomorrow. Takara, another hater. Last 66. You're crazy if you think Trump takes cheap immigrant workers from farm owners. Oh, I see. In the United States, we await Afrikaner immigrants getting H-1B1 visas for their cheap black workers from South Africa. I think racist people do racist things. I think racist people are ideologues. And so, yes, I do think he would kick those workers off those farms. I could be wrong, but I think he would. Black spot, Central and South America, yes. Please talk about the people who are coming here and what America did to the country, such as Haiti. We had the conversation. Yes, we did put that up. Black spot, don't forget due process. Well, he seems to not care about due process. The immigrant situation in Los Angeles is the same play the elites are running in Ukraine, same trick, different border. This is the wrong conversation. I mean, to be fair, Mr. Riffley, she did hit that. She did point out that you guys are effectively fighting each other while they're using this as a just cause to take your civil rights. She hit it on the head, in fact, even pointing out, saying, do you honestly think that the next time around, when they're criminalizing these people, that that's going to somehow stop? It's going to be a playbook that they are effectively running. You heard Colonel Wilkerson point out this is a trial balloon. It's a trial balloon. How does this look like in practice when we decide that we want to stay in all of these whack jobs and lunatics that are knocking down windows in sushi bars and raiding Adidas stores? Those whack job and lunatics are going to be used just like those neocons or those banderites that were in Ukraine in order to cause all sorts of havoc and chaos in the US. They will be eliminated later because they are expendable, but they will be used. That was the point that he was effectively making. The idea that there's a reason you don't see military. And Colonel Wilkerson pointed it out. These people are killers. They're taught to be killers by our military. That's the entire point of the military, right? Go kill that, especially the most lethal being the Marines. And you're sending them in to do what? Police work? Aren't y'all fucking mind? So, yeah, there's that. All right. On Hornet's Nest was kicked today. That is fantastic, I suppose. Zionists are also Muslims, Christians, etc. That is true. Well, I don't know any Zionist Muslims, but Christians, definitely. That is true. I think her point, though, is they're not teaching Zionism in a Christian church. In a synagogue, maybe. Christian church, not so much. Hung Meow, I agree. You're an alien, Jamal. You're reptilian. Okay, fair enough. If that's how you want to feel about it, fair enough. Get Whitney Method. I would love to have Whitney on the show. I've sent her a message on Twitter. Whitney never responded. So there's that. Frank Friel, the big reason for the open border is human trafficking. That is one of the reasons. Cheap labor being the other. Wandy USA, Zionists believe Israel should exist. Yes, non-Zionists believe God determines where Israel exists. Hence, why Zionists exterminated non-Zionist Jews in Germany. Okay, I gotta be honest, I don't know. This is one of those things that is beyond my scope of knowing. Yaakov Shapiro will be on the show on Friday. He can remember that question and ask me that question on Friday. Yaakov, in fact, if I can remember it, I'll bring it up to him about it. Yaakov makes the point of saying Zionism is an anathema to Judaism. Effectively, Zionists hate Jews because one repudiates the other. He makes the argument pretty strongly with a historical context that I can't repeat because he is too eloquent and he knows that stuff chapter and verse in a way that I could ever even try to relay it. He will be on Friday, though, ideally. I think it was Friday. And we can have the conversation with him when he's here. So, fair enough. And one day Zionists can be atheists, yes. So I disagree with Kim, Lover, and your other guests. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And yes, the Zionists that went to Israel were atheistic Jews. So they were atheists at the time. And yes, they can be atheists. I suspect Netanyahu's an atheist. And Renetier Oligarch. Just got here. Have we commented on the hypocrisy of seething about Mexican flags, given Israel flags are all over Congress? I accept that. I'm not seething over Mexican flags being raised. My issue with it is that in a political sense, if you're going to look at how is this going to play, meaning you have a president that's decided to send the Marines, for fuck's sake, into California. Okay, that shouldn't go down well. Having U.S. military function on U.S. soil is outrageous. That shouldn't go down well. How is that going to play in real life? Okay, well, if you have looting, burning cars, women with babies in a car, effectively being threatened, harassed with a car being attacked, with children in the car, and you have them blowing up Wamo cars with some guy with no shirt on standing with a Mexican flag, waving it, a massive Mexican flag. You tell me, how does that play? How does that play? Now, you could make an argument and say, well, wait a minute, they're committing a genocide and they have all these Israeli flags in Congress. You have my full agreement, 1,000%. And also my agreement that the Mexican flag thing is fucking outrageous. The notion that you're standing on a car that's burning, waving this massive flag. Okay, there's a reason the Donald Trump numbers on immigration shot up 22 points. There's a reason. Didn't come out of nowhere. It's shit like that that looks horrendous. That looks horrendous. That looks absolutely and completely horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. All right. I am going to end this. I am dragging ass. We had great guests, a great show. Yeah, I think that's it. Guys, shout out to all of you. Shout out to Kim. Shout out to Colonel Wilkerson. Shout out to Chief. All of them were fantastic. And I thank all of them for joining me. Can't believe y'all bitching about Kim. Just can't believe it. Can't believe it. She's a fantastic guest. She's eloquent. She speaks her mind. And she gives you her honest take. And the fact that she gives you her honest take, there's nothing else better that you can ask from a guest. I don't like partisan actors. And if you don't like partisan actors, then what you get is somebody with an honest take. So, all right, guys, you all have a fantastic day. Who do I have for tomorrow? Let's see. We have Power Show tomorrow. So I'm trying to get Tim Whitmore. Whitmore is the guy from MUFON, but Alex Rayner is going to be here. Dimitri Lascaris is going to be here, and KJ No is going to be here. It's going to be a damn good show. I'll see with Patrick Henningsen if you can join. If you can't, oh well. If you can, that's great. If I can't get him tomorrow, maybe we can get him for Thursday, but we'll see. But you guys have a fantastic day. Most of Friday is booked also. We have Kofi coming in the morning, Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. Thursday, I don't think I have booked mostly. I have Arno, but I'm going to have to add more names to it. All right. I'm Dragon Ass. This has been a very long day. A good one, but a very long one. You all have a fantastic day or fantastic morning, and I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. I know that sounds weird, but time zones. Have a fantastic day. Jamal Thomas Morning Show. Signing off. Have a good one. Where's the button? There we are. Episode, 172. Hot damn. Signing off.